Chapter 261. The seven-colored vortex landed on the gorilla's head. Then, it turned into countless rays of seven-colored light and entered its body through its orifices. The little gorilla stood there in a daze. Its body was completely covered with a layer of seven-colored light. The main reason why Long Houchen agreed to let Cece give it a try was because of his own enlightenment. After the evolution of his domain, his cultivation had also taken a qualitative leap. With his perception, it was impossible for him not to have any enlightenment. The seven-colored vortex should not be underestimated. It was a domain skill formed by his evolved domain. It was a special life seal. Long Houchen did not know how long his seal could last, but when the seal entered the gorilla's body, he found that all the gorilla's life aura was being assimilated by his seal. If no one could remove this seal within 7 days, then after 7 days, the gorilla's life process would be solidified. In other words, it would really become a child. Everything would have to start from the beginning in order to cultivate back to its original realm. After withdrawing his domain, although Long Houchen was a little tired, the joy in his eyes was undeniable. He had obtained his second domain skill. Moreover, this domain skill was very magical. In a sense, it could even change a person's age, life and death, and control the process of life. How powerful was this power? Cece looked at this magical scene in front of her and unconsciously widened her eyes. Although she was still wary of Long Houchen, the natural aura and life aura in Long Houchen's domain made her feel a strong sense of familiarity. It should be fine. I have sealed his life growth path. After 7 days, his body will be solidified in this state. Only by growing again can he return to his original strength. I'm afraid this process will take a long time. Thank you for your kindness. The Lord of Nature will praise you. Cece looked at Long Houchen with her clear eyes and said sincerely. Long Houchen wanted to say something, but the emotionless voice from before sounded again. Mission 2 begins. Help Cece rescue her family, gain her complete trust, and obtain the treasures that she has willingly offered up. Failure will result in failure of the test. Although Long Houchen knew that this was probably the start of the divine seal of eternity and creation's test for him after he saved Cece, he still couldn't help but be slightly surprised when he received the mission. The King Easton mentioned by Cece was definitely the most terrifying existence in this world. If even one of his pets was so powerful, then how powerful would he be? Even if he couldn't reach the level of the Demon Emperor, perhaps he would be comparable to the Moon Demon and Star Demon. Such power wasn't something that the current Long Houchen could resist, especially without Haoyue's help. Cece, what are your plans now? In the conversation just now, they had already exchanged names. Cece's eyes dimmed, and her beautiful face was filled with helplessness. She said, I don't know either. That demon is too powerful. My family. Speaking until here, she couldn't help but cry again. Long Houchen frowned slightly and said in a low voice, Don't cry first. Crying won't solve the problem. Tell me in detail how many races there are in Easton, which ones are close to the King of Easton, and which ones are his enemies. Although I want to help you, I'm afraid it's not enough with just our strength. As he spoke, his heart grew heavier. Long Houchen had always been an observant person. Cece had already seen his strength, especially his amazing ability to control the flow of life. However, after seeing all that, she didn't seem to have any intention of asking for his help. This meant 2 possibilities. The first was that she didn't trust him. The second was even more terrifying. She didn't think that he could shake the King of Easton. Long Houchen was more inclined to the latter. After all, he had just rescued Cece. Although he didn't have much contact with her, he had the God of Light's constitution. The power of light was extremely pure. Even if he couldn't gain Cece's complete trust, at least he wouldn't make her feel conflicted. Cece shook her head silently. No, because the thing I found has already brought a destructive disaster to my people. I can't bring this disaster to the other races. I won't hand that thing over to the demon either. I want to destroy it and then find the King of Easton. Even if I die, I want to die with my family." Seeing the determination in Cece's eyes, the first thing that came to Long Houchen's mind wasn't his mission, but his admiration for the girl. Not only was she kind, but she was also very courageous. Perhaps she wasn't intelligent enough, but a girl as beautiful as she was with such a character was extremely attractive to any man. Long Houchen nodded slightly. "I can understand that you don't want to drag others down, but if you do that, your family might not be able to survive." Cien said mournfully, "Perhaps this is fate. Big Brother Long, you saved my life, and I have no way to repay you. Cece was originally a person who was about to die. If you don't mind, I am willing to give my pure body to you. It can also be considered as repaying you for saving my life, and my next life will also be clean." Long Houchen was shocked and immediately blushed. If he didn't know much about the matters between men and women before, he wouldn't have so many thoughts. However, before this test, he and Kai had just broken through the last line of defense, and it was also the first time he experienced the beauty between a man and a woman. Cece was so beautiful, and the white dress she wore could not hide her curvaceous body at all. When faced with a beautiful woman, anyone would have thoughts in their heart. The difference was that these thoughts ranged from admiration to naughtiness. Of course, there were also embarrassment and shyness. Take Long Houchen for example. "Cece, don't be like this." Seeing Cece fall into his arms with a pitiful expression, Long Houchen was truly at a loss. He quickly grabbed her shoulders with both hands and forced her to maintain a certain distance from him. Cece raised her head to look at Long Houchen, and said with teary eyes, "Brother Long, do you dislike me, or are you afraid of being implicated by me? My body is really pure. I've never let a man touch it, not even like this." Hearing her say that, Long Houchen immediately loosened his hands as if he had been electrocuted. He smiled bitterly. "Cece, listen to me. Cece, listen to me. I just happened to save you at the right time. I'm not asking you to repay me for anything. Besides, since I've come across this, I'm willing to help you. My ability might not be as powerful as the King of Easton you mentioned, but we can still try. If we're lucky, we might be able to save your family. Even if we don't succeed, you shouldn't commit suicide so easily. There's only hope if you're alive. There's nothing left if you die." Cece nodded silently. "Thank you, Brother Long. I really don't know how to thank you. You saved my life. I'll give my body to you whenever you're willing." Long Houchen was greatly embarrassed. He quickly waved his hands and said, "Cece, let's not talk about this. It's more important to think of a way to save your family. Where does this King Easton you speak of live? Can you draw me a map?" Cece nodded and said, "All right." At that moment, she and Long Houchen squatted on the ground. Cece used a branch to draw a detailed map on the ground. She was very good at drawing and drew in great detail. As she drew, she explained the layout of King Easton's cave to Long Houchen. Although King Easton doesn't have his own army, he has powerful natural powers. There are at least a dozen gorilla-level magical beasts like the one we saw earlier that are his pets. If we want to enter King Easton's cave, we must avoid the guards. My family might be imprisoned in the deepest part of the cave by King Easton." Long Houchen listened to her quietly and kept nodding, committing Cece's words to memory. A faint fragrance wafted from Cece's body from time to time, wafting into Long Houchen's nose. It was different from Kai-Er's fragrance. Cece's fragrance had more of a natural aura of life. It was like an alluring peony, fresh, elegant, and beautiful. However, Long Houchen's mind was steady enough. He kept his eyes on his nose on his mouth, and his mouth on his heart. He would never look at Cece again. "That's the map and the layout." Cece smiled sweetly at Long Houchen. Compared to before, she seemed to have suppressed her sorrow. With a smile, she looked even more beautiful. Long Houchen thought for a moment and said, I suggest we make a trip there and scout out the situation. If there's a chance, I'll enter the cave to look for your family. You can wait outside in a safe place. That won't do. How can I let you risk your life for my sake? Cece shook her head firmly and said, I'll go in with you. When my father was still alive, he brought me to King Easton's cave. I'm much more familiar with that place than you are. Also, Brother Long, I don't quite agree with your method. If we scout, it'll be very easy to alert the enemy. Once King Easton is on guard, it'll be even more impossible for us to succeed. King Easton has a habit. He takes an afternoon nap every day for around 2 hours. During this time, he'll sleep very, very deeply, but he'll also use a god artifact to protect his body. His pet's defenses are the tightest during this time, but I think this is our best chance. If we can avoid his pets and enter the cave, we'll definitely be able to save my family. A hint of surprise appeared in Long Houchen's eyes as he listened to Cece's logical and meticulous analysis. He said, Looks like you've been prepared. The smile on Cece's pretty face froze. She sighed softly and sadness appeared in her eyes again. She said, Ever since my home was destroyed, I've been thinking about how to save my family at every moment. I've racked my brains, and the method I mentioned just now should be the most feasible. At that, Cece suddenly knelt before Long Houchen. Her action was so sudden that it gave Long Houchen a fright. Miss Cece, what are you doing? Long Houchen wanted to help her up, but Cece raised her hand to stop him. She looked at Long Houchen with teary eyes and said, Brother Long, after we enter King Easton's cave, I have a request. If we're discovered, I'll take the initiative to lure him away. You must use this opportunity to save my family. To be able to exchange my life for the safety of my family, Cece's death will be worth it. Even if my soul goes to heaven, I won't forget your kindness. As she spoke, she kowtowed to Long Houchen. Long Houchen naturally couldn't let her kowtow. He hurriedly helped her up and said, Cece, leave the matter of luring the enemy to me. First of all, I don't know your family. Even if I see them, they might not be willing to leave with me. Secondly, my cultivation is higher than yours. My chances of escaping by luring King Easton away are much higher than yours. Moreover, I'm a man. How can I let you carry out such a risky operation? However, I'm a little worried. How can we sneak into King Easton's cave without being discovered by his pets? Cece thought for a moment and said, There's a holy medicine in my tribe called intoxicating lilac. Once it's ignited, anyone who smells it will fall into a delirious state for a short period of time. As long as they're not attacked, they'll need at least an hour to regain consciousness. If we can find this holy medicine, we can safely enter King Easton's cave without killing. If I remember correctly, there might be intoxicating lilac in one of the caves nearby. I'm just not sure if there are any mature ones. Long Houchen nodded and said, If that's the case, let's go look for it. Do you remember the exact location of the cave? Cece thought for a moment and said, I can give it a try. Thank you, Brother Long. As she spoke, she released a pair of icy blue spirit wings and smiled at Long Houchen. She spread her wings and flew in a certain direction. She subconsciously glanced at the 6 golden wings on Long Houchen's back, and a hint of envy appeared in her beautiful eyes. Long Houchen exchanged a look with her, then spread his spirit wings and followed behind her with a smile. Cece flew into the air first, but she did not fly too high. She stuck to the treetops and looked around for a while. After looking at the bright sunlight in the sky, she waved at Long Houchen and flew in a certain direction. The two of them flew for about 15 minutes before Cece slowly descended with Long Houchen. They landed next to an exceptionally tall redwood tree. Under the tree there was a small hill. Cece said happily, It should be here. This redwood tree is the best coordinate. If I remember correctly, there are lilacs growing in the cave behind this hill. It's intoxicating. As she spoke, she quickly flew forward and brought Long Houchen to the other side of the hill. This side seemed no different from the previous one, but when Long Houchen scanned with his perception, he immediately discovered that there was a cave as tall as a person hidden under the vegetation on the surface. The cave extended all the way down, and he also discovered that there seemed to be a magic array at the entrance of the cave. The reason why the situation inside could not be seen from the outside was that the magic array acted as a smokescreen. It even had a decent defense. Long Houchen's soul had already reached the minute subtlety realm. There was no way he would be wrong when he was inspecting at such a close distance. Cece arrived in front of the cave and pointed at it with her right hand. Suddenly, a white light flashed, and the shrubs in front of them slowly opened up. Cece turned back and smiled at Long Houchen. After discovering this place, I left a small smoke screen here to prevent wild beasts from attacking the sacred medicine. Long Houchen nodded and said, I'll help you guard the cave entrance. Go in and see if there's any more intoxicating lilac. Okay. Cece agreed and quickly walked into the cave. Long Houchen closed his eyes slightly, and his powerful soul power quickly spread to the surroundings. He felt all the changes in his surroundings. He pressed his right hand on a big tree in front of him, and his body shone with a rainbow light. He was using his evolution domain to increase the strength of his soul. Coupled with the profound meaning of controlling the process of life, he used the tree to further enhance his soul perception with the help of the natural environment here. Not long after, Cece walked out of the cave. She carefully held a herb in her hands. There was still soil under the herb, and Cece used a piece of cloth to wrap it. The part of the herb exposed was a plant about a foot long. It was completely pink, and there were 3 clusters of white flowers at the top. It really did look like lilacs. Seeing Long Houchen holding the tree, Cece hurried over and said, Brother Long, I did it. Look, this is intoxicating lilac. Long Houchen's reaction seemed a little slow. After hearing her voice, he paused for a moment before turning to look at her. Looking at the intoxicating lilac in Cece's hands, Long Houchen said, Is this herb enough? Cece nodded and said, Lilac's intoxicating rhizome can neutralize its hallucinogenic poison. When the time comes, we only need to keep a piece in our mouth. Brother Dragon, there's still 2 hours until noon. You've just fought that pet. Why don't you rest for a day? We'll go to King Easton's cave tomorrow. Although she said that, the anxiety in her eyes could not be concealed at all. Long Houchen said, I'll help you to the end. Let's go now. According to the mission given to him by the throne of God of eternity and creation, not only did he have to help Cece save her family, he also had to gain her trust and obtain the treasure that wiped out her family. When he first received this mission, Long Houchen had been in a difficult position. Even if Long Houchen could not succeed in the first mission, he could at least try his best. However, the second mission went against his principles. But now, he seemed to have found some clues about the mission. Cece bowed deeply to Long Houchen. Her beautiful eyes became misty as she said, Big Brother Long, we've only known each other for such a short period of time, yet you've spared no effort to help me. Cece will remember this. If we're able to succeed this time, I'll definitely repay you 10-fold, or even 100-fold. As long as you can save my family, Cece is willing to do anything for you. After saying that, as if she was afraid that she could not control her emotions, she immediately turned and flew. However, she did not rush out of the canopy, but instead dodged the trees and flew forward. Although Cece's cultivation was not as good as Long Houchen's, she was still an 8th-grade magician. Her flying speed was very fast, and her flying skills were quite good. Shuttling through the forest did not affect her speed much. As for Long Houchen, it would not be a problem. Back when he was on the 2nd floor of the Tower of Eternity, he had fully practiced his flying skills. Coupled with his strong perception as a guide, he followed Cece 30 meters behind, always maintaining the same distance. After flying at high speed for about half an hour, Cece chose a very hidden route. During this time, Long Houchen's sole perception sensed the existence of at least a few large villages, but Cece cleverly avoided them. Obviously, she knew the location of these villages. In the distance, a green mountain completely covered in vegetation appeared in Long Houchen's perception. The mountain was not very tall, less than 1,000 meters. However, when he neared it, the natural aura of life was at least 3 times denser than when he had first arrived in this world. Cece slowed down and came to Long Houchen's side. She whispered, "Brother Long, from now on, we have to conceal our auras. King Easton should not have started his afternoon nap. His perception is very strong, so we must be careful. His cave is not far ahead, halfway up Easton Holy Mountain. When we get close to Easton Holy Mountain, I will light up some lilac incense to make people faint." As she spoke, she handed a thin root to Long Houchen, indicating that he could put it in his mouth. Long Houchen did as she said. As soon as the root entered his mouth, a refreshing feeling spread through his body, giving him a comfortable feeling. Cece moved forward very carefully. A layer of faint golden light emitted from Long Houchen's body, enveloping him and Cece. Cece looked at him in surprise, because she realized that she seemed to have turned into a ray of sunlight. Other than the aura of light that was as pure as sunlight, she did not emit any other aura. Long Houchen smiled and pointed to the front, indicating that she could set off. Cece moved forward very carefully. After flying for about 15 minutes, she retracted her spiritual wings and landed on the ground. Although she was a sorcerer, she had spiritual power to nourish her body, so her movements were rather agile. Long Houchen took the initiative to lead the way for her. The vegetation here was too lush, and as a sorcerer, it was difficult for Cece to walk. Go forward 50 meters, turn left 10 meters, continue forward 20 meters, then turn right 15 meters. Slow down a little. Cece followed behind Long Houchen, constantly directing him to move forward. Long Houchen was very cooperative, and did not make any mistakes under Cece's nervous gaze. However, he was still surprised that Cece was so familiar with Mount Easton. Of course, the speed at which they were walking was not very fast. After advancing for another 15 minutes, they finally reached the foot of Mount Easton. Cece stopped and looked up at the sky. Long Houchen happened to turn around and look at her. Seeing her long eyelashes flutter, he could not help but marvel at Cece's beauty once again. King Easton is about to start his afternoon nap. Brother Long, I'll be relying on you now. I'm going to light the holy medicine. As she spoke, she lifted the intoxicating lilac upside down and lit it carefully with a match. Immediately, a faint green smoke floated into the air. Cece did not let the smoke spread. Instead, she quickly released a layer of water, enveloping the burning intoxicating lilac upside down. The smoke and water combined, and soon, the water emitted a strange faint pink color. The intoxicating lilac upside down burned very quickly. In just a few breaths' time, it was reduced to ashes. Meanwhile, the water screen in Cece's hand had already turned an alluring pink color. With a flick of her wrist, Cece muttered a few incantations. Immediately, the pink water screen began to condense rapidly. In the blink of an eye, it had turned into a dozen or so pink ice beads the size of longans. They looked very beautiful, as if they were pink gems. Cece smiled sweetly at Long Houchen and said, "This is the only way to store the power of the holy medicine. Once we enter the sacred mountain, we'll detonate the ice beads. The resulting ice mist will be effective, and we can go up the mountain. From here, we'll keep going up. Brother Long, we have to hurry." Seeing that Cece had once again released her spiritual wings, Long Houchen did the same. The two of them stuck close to the mountain walls as they flew upward. As they flew, Cece would toss an ice bead in different directions from time to time. Just as she said, the ice beads would immediately explode as soon as they flew out, turning into a pink mist that slowly drifted away into the distance. As expected, they did not encounter any obstructions along the way. Soon, a huge natural cave had appeared in front of them. However, at the entrance of the cave, Long Houchen could sense 4 powerful presences. Cece caught up to Long Houchen and gestured for him to slow down. At the same time, she tossed an ice bead into the air. After it exploded in the air, the ice mist silently drifted towards the entrance of the cave. Soon, the 4 powerful presences from before weakened. Long Houchen was secretly shocked. The intoxicating lilac upside down was indeed powerful. The guards of King Easton's cave must be at least rank 9 powerhouses. If he had not been holding its root in his mouth, he might not have been able to use the power of light to nullify its poison. Floating up, the 2 of them landed at the entrance of the cave at the same time. A hint of excitement flashed across Cece's eyes. There were 4 huge bodies lying on the ground. They were exactly the same as the gorillas Long Houchen had seen before. Even though they had fallen asleep on the ground, their huge bodies still looked shockingly powerful. However, they were only asleep, their breathing steady and even. As if sensing Long Houchen's doubts, Cece smiled and said, "Brother Long, don't worry. Although the intoxicating lilac upside down is very powerful, it has no effect on domain realm masters. Otherwise, wouldn't I be able to use it to save my family? Let's go in quickly, or else it'll be too late." King Easton's natural cave was extremely spacious. Walking into the cave, the thick aura of nature and immense life force washed over them. Long Houchen felt as if all the pores on his body had opened up. He took a deep breath, and the spiritual energy in his body increased at an alarming rate. It was comparable to when he was concentrating on cultivation. Life force can actually increase my spiritual energy too? Long Houchen knew very well that this would not have happened in the past. This increase must have occurred when his cultivation level had broken through from level 2 to level 3. Cece waved at Long Houchen. Without retracting her spirit wings, she instantly accelerated and flew into the depths of the cave. This natural cave was of uncanny workmanship. Only after entering could one feel its enormity. It was as if half of the mountain had been hollowed out. The space inside was extremely spacious. Long Houchen and Cece flew inside like 2 inconspicuous insects. Moreover, this uncanny workmanship of the cave had no signs of human intervention. It should have been naturally formed, which was even more impressive. There was no time to admire the wonders of this cave. Soon, they entered the belly of the mountain. Right at this moment, a strange sound traveled into Long Houchen's ears. Huff, huff, huff. The deafening snoring caused Long Houchen's expression to instantly turn strange. "This is..." Cece nodded and said in a low voice, "King Easton is already asleep. This is his snoring. Let's go quickly." Long Houchen was amused. Could it be that the more powerful one was, the louder one's snoring would be? The belly of the mountain was the widest place in the entire cave. After searching for a while, Cece led Long Houchen to the back of a huge rock. There was a tunnel behind the rock that led straight inside. The tunnel was only as tall as a person, and there was a huge rock in front of it. If they had not come so close, they would not have been able to find it at all. "Brother Long, this should lead to the back of the cave. My family should be imprisoned there. At this point, she looked at Long Houchen hesitantly. Long Houchen said, "Go rescue your family. I'll stand guard here. If King Easton discovers us, I'll help you lure him away." Cece bit her lip and stared deeply at Long Houchen. Suddenly, she threw herself into his arms and hugged him tightly. Caught off guard, Long Houchen was hugged by her. "Brother Long, as long as you can rescue my family, Cece will be your servant and serve you for the rest of your life." After saying that, she finally let go of him and rushed into the cave. Long Houchen raised his right hand and patted her back. A small rainbow vortex instantly surged into Cece's body. Cece felt her spiritual power increase exponentially. She could not help but look back at Long Houchen gratefully. "Be careful." Long Houchen nodded at her. Cece nodded slightly. then sped up again and disappeared around the corner of the tunnel. With a leap, Long Houchen jumped onto the boulder in front of the tunnel. It was also at this moment that the sonorous snoring suddenly stopped. Who dares to enter this king's forbidden grounds? The sonorous voice was just like the snoring from before. In this huge mountain that was over 300 meters tall, his voice echoed like rolling thunder. Long Houchen's eyes flashed. In his chest, the light produced by the beating of the heart of eternity began to fluctuate violently. The evolution of the light god's domain allowed him to directly convert the life aura in the outside world into his own spiritual power. When the life aura entered within 10 meters of his body, it actually turned into countless green light spots and fused into Long Houchen's body. It looked very strange. A terrifying pressure instantly surged from all directions. Dazzling rainbow light also spread out from Long Houchen's body. How could he not use his domain when facing an expert of King Easton's level? Before the person arrived, the light of the aquamarine domain had already arrived. The color of King Easton's domain was very special. The aquamarine was bright and glistening, yet so noble. The extremely dense life aura was actually not inferior to Long Houchen's achievements in the light element in terms of purity. The aquamarine and the rainbow light collided, and a strange scene appeared. The two domains did not collide and attack each other. Instead, the rainbow light and the aquamarine merged silently after coming into contact. The rainbow light clearly had the upper hand. When it came into contact with the aquamarine domain, it actually expanded rapidly. The golden light became even more dazzling, and the domain expanded by more than a third in the blink of an eye. The sonorous voice seemed a little confused. Then, Long Houchen saw a figure appear in the center of the aquamarine light, dumbfounded. At the same time, the aquamarine domain retracted, maintaining a certain distance from his light god's domain. If King Easton's body was extremely large, even larger than the gorillas outside, Long Houchen would not be so shocked. This was because this ruler of the world of Easton, who Cece was extremely afraid of, was just too short. Could he be 5 feet tall? That was the most he could be. If he stood in front of Long Houchen, he would not even be able to reach Long Houchen's chest. This king of Easton had a head of thick, short brown hair. It was curly and looked rather messy on top of his head. He wore armor that seemed to be carved out of jade, shining with dazzling light. Although he was not tall, he was extremely muscular. The width of his shoulders was at least 2/3 of his height. His chest was broad, and his face was covered with a long beard. Among his facial organs, only his nose and eyes could be seen clearly. King Easton truly had a brandy nose. His nose was bright red, but his eyes were the same brown as his hair. In his left hand, he held a giant axe. Just the surface of the axe alone was about the same size as his body. In his right hand, he held a giant hammer that was about the same size as the axe. It was rather strange for him to hold the pair of huge aquamarine weapons with his short, muscular body. Divine weapons. Although the two weapons were aquamarine like King Easton's armor, Long Houchen could immediately tell that all 3 weapons were divine weapons. The color could be different, but there was no mistaking the aura. The extremely pure life aura had already dyed the entire cave green. However, although King Easton's aura seemed powerful, it did not put much pressure on Long Houchen. The light god's domain shrunk to a diameter of 30 meters around Long Houchen. Any aquamarine light that entered this range would immediately become a part of the light god's domain. Chapter 262. Long Houchen had just completed his advancement. Coupled with the brief devouring of King Easton's life domain, he felt that he was in an unprecedentedly powerful state. However, the heart of eternity in his chest continued to beat, as if it was recovering its spiritual power. "Human, why have you entered my territory?" King Easton's voice was still as deafening as ever, inversely proportional to his size. Long Houchen said in a low voice, "King Easton, you bullied the weak for your own selfish desires. You even committed the sin of exterminating your entire race. Today you will pay the price. As he spoke, Long Houchen clasped his hands above his head. The aria of the goddess of light and blue rain, hibiscus of light, had already fused together. Dazzling rainbow light instantly rose, and his light god's domain rippled outward like water. Bulsh *T. King Easton cursed. He swung his axe and hammer at the same time. Immediately, his aquamarine life domain transformed into countless plants in the air, charging towards Long Houchen's light god's domain. The aquamarine light entered the rainbow light, and the result was the same as before. The aquamarine light only boosted the rainbow light's power. The power of Long Houchen's light god's domain instantly increased, and the speed at which he charged out became even faster. How can this be? King Easton was shocked. He quickly retracted his domain and leaped towards Long Houchen. It was extremely rare for a domain to completely restrain another. This would only happen when two domains were mutually restraining each other to the extreme. However, Long Houchen's domain and King Easton's domain were not simply restraining each other. They also had complementary characteristics. King Easton's life domain could be said to be the best fuel for Long Houchen's light god's domain. In just a moment, the strength of Long Houchen's domain had already surpassed his control. Faced with King Easton's attack, Long Houchen showed no fear at all. He held the swords of life and creation with both hands and slashed down. It was the Shura slash. The Azura slash was not the same as before. Not only did it contain the power of Long Houchen's domain, but it also contained his comprehension of sword intent and sword soul. A rainbow-colored light descended from the sky, and the entire mountain was filled with a murderous aura. At this moment, Long Houchen exuded an unprecedented majesty. As soon as the emerald light around King Easton's body came into contact with Long Houchen's sword light, the rainbow light on it immediately weakened as if it had melted. Even the divine artifacts in his hands were greatly affected. However, King Easton's spiritual power was far stronger than Long Houchen's. With a loud roar, he separated his weapons. Immediately, Long Houchen's sword intent was torn apart by a terrifying force. At the same time, he closed in, and the axe in his right hand collided with Long Houchen's swords of life and creation. A look of shock appeared on Long Houchen's face. He had never thought that a person, or rather, any living creature, could possess such terrifying power. He was even certain that even the Demon Emperor could not possess such strength in terms of power. However, the swords of life and creation were only slightly touched. In the next moment, Long Houchen's entire body was flung away like a cannonball, and he crashed into the wall in the distance. The stone walls in the belly of the mountain were extremely hard, but even so, when Long Houchen's body collided with them, the jade-green fragments scattered in all directions, and he forcefully smashed a large hole in the wall. With Long Houchen's 9th-tier 3rd-rank cultivation, coupled with the suppression of his opponent's domain and sword intent, he did not expect such an outcome when facing King Easton's power. The heart of eternity beat violently, but Long Houchen could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. He felt as if his body had been crushed by a huge boulder. There was no part of his body that did not hurt, especially his arms, which did not feel like his own. The swords of life and creation had completely split after that instant of contact, turning back into two heavy swords. Moreover, they were covered in fine cracks, as if they were about to shatter. Although Long Houchen's body was rapidly recovering, how was he supposed to continue fighting like this? No wonder even his pet had such great power. No wonder he had such terrifying snores despite his short stature. It turned out that his power was terrifying. King Easton's smug voice rang out, "Haha, I have the bloodline of the Titan King. In terms of power, even a god can only bow down before me." Just as he was feeling smug, dense rainbow light slowly drifted out from the hole that Long Houchen's body had created. Compared to before, the rainbow light was even more intense, and it was emitting a soft buzzing sound in a strange trajectory. The rainbow light swirled, and the light seemed to be spinning rapidly. In the next moment, Long Houchen had reappeared in mid-air. Taking a deep breath, Long Houchen stared at King Easton with a burning gaze. "Since I can't fight you in terms of power, I can only use my domain." In the next instant, Long Houchen seemed to have turned into a sun. 7-colored golden light burst out and instantly illuminated every corner of the mountain. King Easton was not spared either. Although he had terrifying power, he was completely suppressed by Long Houchen in terms of attribute. As the rainbow light enveloped him, King Easton could clearly feel his spiritual power being sucked away at an alarming rate. Of course, he could not use his domain at this moment. That would only speed up the rate at which his cultivation was being devoured by the light god domain. Only by attacking the enemy's weakness and defeating Long Houchen could he remove the threat of the light god domain. King Easton roared furiously. The giant hammer in his right hand suddenly flew out of his hand, flying towards Long Houchen like a huge green meteor. Long Houchen smiled calmly and said, "In terms of power, even 100 of me may not be your match. However, your domain has been completely suppressed by me. Without the weakening and counteracting effect of the domain, no matter how powerful you are still a non-domain realm master." As he spoke, the giant hammer had already swept past his body. However, it only shattered an afterimage. The giant hammer flew through the air. Just as it was about to touch the cave wall, it drew an arc in the air and returned to King Easton's hand. Inside the cave, King Easton could only see rainbow gold. The light god domain allowed him to see only rainbow colors. The cave seemed to have disappeared, and everything around him was rainbow. Just as Long Houchen said, without a domain, a normal cultivator would not stand a chance against a domain master. Just the dominating nature of the domain was enough to render him powerless. King Easton fell silent. His brown eyes shone with a dazzling light. The giant weapons in his hands were sheathed by his side. He was trying to sense Long Houchen's location. However, he quickly realized that it was useless. In Long Houchen's domain, all he could sense was light. He could not even detect a trace of soul presence. Long Houchen was currently hidden in the light god domain, rapidly healing his body. At the same time, his brain was working at high speed. If not for the absolute suppression of the domain, even the strongest human on the Holy Demon Continent, Holy Star Knight Yang Haoyu, would not be a match for King Easton. His power was just too terrifying. In his domain, the life force was so pure. Fortunately, Long Houchen's light god domain had evolved and gained the ability to control the process of life, allowing it to fuse with life force. Otherwise, he would have no choice but to escape. Under the influence of the light god domain, his spiritual power was greatly reduced. No matter how strong his physical strength was, without the support of spiritual power, he could only be slowly tortured to death by Long Houchen. The King of Easton's eyes were filled with reluctance. This battle had been too frustrating. He had never thought that someone's domain could restrain his domain so much. It should be known that his life domain possessed the powerful ability to control the life force of all animals and plants. Once enveloped by his domain, the enemy's life force would be rapidly sucked away. Coupled with his extraordinary strength, there had never been anyone in the world of Easton who could pose any threat to him. However, things did not go as he wished. He had encountered great trouble today. His life dominion, which he had always been so proud of, was like dry wood meeting a raging fire against Long Houchen's evolved light god domain. Then, the dry wood could only be ignited. King Easton roared furiously at the sky. The life force on his body immediately erupted like a geyser. The life dominion that he had previously hidden was unleashed once again. Although it was like quenching thirst with poison, this was the only way he could discover Long Houchen's location through the collision of their domains. In a flash, King Easton's speed was instantly raised to the limit. At the same time, the weapons in his hands flew out at the same time, covering the area where Long Houchen was. The two god weapons flew towards Long Houchen at high speed. However, just as they were about to come into contact, they turned at the same time and collided with each other. A terrifying boom erupted, and a thick layer of emerald lightning scattered in all directions, covering an area of at least 300 square meters. Haha, let's see where you can run now. You've been hit by my lightning. Even if your domain can suppress mine, you'll still be paralyzed and shaken. King Easton realized something was wrong as soon as he said that. This was because he discovered that Long Houchen's figure had disappeared. Moreover, the light god domain was rapidly fusing with his life dominion. No, that's impossible. King Easton caught the two god weapons that flew back to him in confusion. His face was filled with disbelief. Long Houchen's voice rang out from all directions. There's nothing impossible about that. Not only is my domain superior to yours and suppresses you, but my spiritual energy is also stronger than yours. As a result, even when our domains collide, I can suppress your senses so that you won't be able to find the real me. Although that was what he said, Long Houchen was still shocked. The power of the collision between the two god weapons was too terrifying. If he had really been within that range, he might not have died, but he would have been completely restricted or even sealed. King Easton would have been able to turn the tables and win the battle. King Easton was indignant, but he had no choice but to quickly retract his life dominion. If he did not, his spiritual energy would only be consumed even more. Meanwhile, the power of Long Houchen's domain continued to increase. Even the speed at which his life dominion was melting was increasing. Do you believe that I can use all of Easton's life force to burst your domain? King Easton raised the god weapons in his hands and threatened. Long Houchen smiled. You can try. Don't you think that if you really do that, you'll be melted before my domain bursts? King Easton was immediately speechless. He was truly indignant. He knew that his opponent was weaker than him, but he still could not defeat him. It was an uncomfortable feeling. Of course, he could also escape with the life dominion's protection. However, as the king of Easton, how could he continue ruling Easton if he gave up his territory and ran away? Just as King Easton was enraged, the rainbow light around him suddenly receded. Long Houchen's true form appeared. After a period of recuperation, the damage from being sent flying had already healed. Moreover, because he had devoured a large amount of life force to replenish his domain, not only did the light dominion not consume Long Houchen's spiritual energy, it even fed back to him, allowing him to recover most of his spiritual energy. King Easton's expression was very ugly. Of course, only he could feel it. Long Houchen could only see the beard on his face, but he could still see the extreme indignation in King Easton's eyes. Human, did you come here just to humiliate me? King Easton growled. Against him, Long Houchen was clearly undefeatable. Although he had retracted his domain, King Easton knew that he did not have the ability to kill Long Houchen instantly. At the same time, he could not do that, just like how he could sense that Long Houchen would not kill him either. Long Houchen shook his head and said, "Of course not. I was invited here by someone to deal with you. She told me that you killed all her clansmen for the sake of seizing her treasures, and you even captured her family. I came here this time to help her rescue her family. Bullsh *T. I'm the representative of the master of nature in the human world. I'm the embodiment of nature and the will of life. How could I do such a thing? Although you have the heart of light and the glory of the supreme light, you cannot humiliate me. I'm the child of the master of nature." King Easton was furious. He clapped the terrifying god weapons in his hands together. Suddenly, he seemed to think of something and hurriedly asked, "Who is this person you mentioned just now? I want to know who dares to slander the representative of the master of nature and slander the great King Easton." Just as Long Houchen was about to speak, the entire cavern suddenly shook violently. Then, an indescribably powerful force came from the cavern Cece had entered. It was also the power of life, but this power was not the power to create life, but the power to destroy life. Sensing the appearance of this aura, King Easton immediately paled. However, he did not take any action. It was as if he was extremely afraid of the power to destroy life. He quickly retreated to the side and even hid behind Long Houchen. At this moment, a white figure emerged from the cavern. As soon as she appeared, the power to destroy life was immediately unleashed. The terrifying wave of spiritual energy pressed Long Houchen and King Easton against the stone wall in the distance. However, they quickly adapted to this power and immediately flew back into the air. King Easton stared at Long Houchen in shock and anger. You actually had someone sneak into the forbidden area and steal the seed of the tree of destruction? Do you know that this will destroy the balance of the entire world of Easton? It will even turn all the creatures in Easton into nothingness. The white figure who had appeared in a flash was naturally Cece. At this moment, she was holding an extremely strange stone in her right hand. The stone looked very strange. Half of it was gold and the other half was silver, and it gave off a faint glow of gold and silver. At the point where the gold and silver intersected, a small sapling emerged. The sapling was faint purple in color, with faint purple spots on it. The tremendous power to destroy life that Long Houchen had sensed earlier actually came from this sapling. Without a doubt, this was the seed of the tree of destruction that King Easton had mentioned. Cece, did you save your family? Long Houchen asked. Cece raised her head to look at Long Houchen and King Easton. She was also slightly taken aback. She asked in return, "Why didn't you lure him away?" Long Houchen replied, "My domain just happened to counter him, so I defeated him. Naturally, I don't need to lure him away anymore." "You still haven't answered my question." Cece smiled sweetly. "It's fine. That's not important anymore. Brother Long, thank you for helping me obtain the seed of the tree of destruction. From now on, I am the ruler of the world of Easton. I will grow alongside the tree of destruction until this place becomes my celestial realm of destruction. I didn't expect you to be so powerful that you could even defeat King Easton. But, since you've defeated him, why didn't you kill him along the way? That's fine too. Let me do it myself." King Easton was instantly enraged when he saw Cece. "It's you, so it's you, Queen Yu Yi. What are you trying to do? So you stole the Sun and Moon Divine Stone for the seed of the tree of destruction. Are you trying to destroy the world of Easton?" Long Houchen was stunned when he heard the name Yu Yi. He couldn't help but think of Yu Yi, who was far away in the demonic capital. It had been so many years since they last met. He wondered how she was doing. However, the demon emperor had said that he wouldn't harm her. Was she doing well? Cece sneered. "Shorty, if you hadn't forced us Yu Yi clan into a corner, why would I take such a risk? The moment I planted the tree of destruction in the Sun and Moon Divine Stone, I've already changed my faith. King Easton, I might not be able to kill you today, but when the tree of destruction matures, you'll be my first target." Long Houchen frowned slightly. He looked at Cece and said calmly, "Cece, this doesn't seem to be what you said. Looks like you're not here to rescue your family?" Cece looked at Long Houchen with a complicated expression. She sighed softly and said, "Brother Long Houchen, I'm sorry. I lied to you, but I had no choice. You're too kind and trusting too easily. However, it's worth it for me to use you. You're so handsome, but it's a pity that you've inherited the light's legacy. Don't worry, once I've completely fused with the tree of destruction, I'll definitely find you the best tomb. Of course, if you're willing to give up your faith in the light and follow me to comprehend the mysteries of darkness, not only will I not kill you, I'll even marry you and become your wife. After all, outstanding humans like you are too rare." As she spoke, Cece's body began to change. Her ears became pointy, and her black hair slowly fluttered in the wind, becoming more twisted, spreading out behind her like a huge black wave. 3 pairs of translucent but faintly black wings unfurled. Her stunning features gained an additional mysterious allure, and her aura skyrocketed. Although she wasn't as powerful as King Easton, she was at least a domain expert. Cece's voice was no longer as gentle as before. Instead, it was filled with pride as she said, "Let me reintroduce myself. I am the controller of darkness and water, the Moonlight Queen of Easton, the chief of the Dark Night Elves. My people have been gradually forced to extinction by you humans and the elves. If I don't do something, my entire race will be wiped out. So, what I said to you before wasn't all a lie. As for my parents and relatives, they don't exist. As the Moonlight Queen, I am the supreme controller of darkness, so I don't need any blood relatives." Hearing her words, Long Houchen stared at her silently, but his expression didn't change much. King Easton roared, and clashed the 2 god weapons in his hands. The Life Dominion immediately shone brightly with aquamarine light. He said, "Queen Yu Yi, do you think you can still leave today?" Queen Yu Yi Cece smiled and said, "Can't leave? In the past, you might have had a chance to keep me here, but now..." As he spoke, he slowly raised the Tree of Destruction in his hand. A thick aura of darkness, accompanied by coldness, was quickly injected into the divine stone of sun and moon. Immediately, a terrifying pressure several times stronger than before burst forth, suppressing King Easton's life dominion so much that it rapidly shrank. The Tree of Destruction is the companion of the Tree of Eternity, and the Tree of Eternity is the home of the Master of Nature. Although you're the spokesperson of the Master of Nature, how can you fight against the Tree of Destruction? Even if the Tree of Destruction has only just sprouted, your power isn't enough to stop me from leaving." With a flash, Long Houchen appeared in front of King Easton. 7-colored light instantly blossomed, protecting King Easton's life dominion behind it. The destructive aura of life from the Tree of Destruction did not suppress his light dominion as much as it did his life dominion. At least, Long Houchen did not retreat. The 2 domains clashed against each other, producing faint sounds. A hint of resentment appeared on Cece's face. "Brother Dragon, are you going against me?" Long Houchen frowned slightly. "Looks like I was wrong." Cece giggled. "What's the point of knowing now? A goody two-shoes like you will always be at a disadvantage. Consider my suggestion. Follow the darkness, and I'll let you stay by my side forever. You'll be second only to me, but above everyone else." Long Houchen shook his head gently. "Although I was wrong, it wasn't too ridiculous. A good person doesn't necessarily have to be an idiot. It's not too late to make up for my mistake." Cece looked at Long Houchen with some doubt in her eyes, but the spiritual power she injected into the sapling of the Tree of Destruction became stronger. Long Houchen raised his hand and pointed at the Yu Yi Queen. A strange layer of 7-colored light suddenly burst forth from her body. The gentle golden color seemed harmless, but the process of the 7-colored light spreading made Cece scream. Her dark spiritual power was instantly cut off, and her body began to shrink. "Why you put a curse on me, you bastard?" Cece's voice became sharper and more childish. In just a short while, her body had shrunk to the size of a 3- or 4-year-old girl. She even had to hold the Sun-Moon Divine Stone with both hands. Her vitality was not the only thing that had declined. Her strength had also declined. Although Cece still had her original thoughts, her powerful domain-level cultivation had completely disappeared. Naturally, she could no longer activate the destructive power of life. "I didn't know you were so despicable to plant a seal in my body." Cece glared at Long Houchen with a childish voice. It had to be said that not only was she originally a beauty, but she was also a beauty after turning into a little girl. In fact, she was even more adorable. The 6 wings on her back had also become small and exquisite, making her look rather fun to play with. Long Houchen shook his head. "I'm not the despicable one. It's because I saw through your lies that I left a backup plan. If King Easton is really an evil person like you said, then I will definitely do my best to help you. Unfortunately, you lied to me. It's useless. Even the power of the Tree of Destruction can't dispel my seal. That's right, I definitely don't have the power of the Tree of Eternity that you mentioned, but I can be sure that my light is at least at the level of the Tree of Eternity. Cece mumbled, You're lying, you're lying. You didn't see through my scheme at all. You were the despicable one who wanted to obtain my treasures, so you cursed me. Long Houchen smiled calmly. If you don't want others to know about it, then don't do it. Since that's the case, I'll convince you wholeheartedly. First of all, there's a flaw in your words. When you thanked me before we took action, you said that even if you die, your soul will go to heaven, and not return to the embrace of the Lord of Nature. At that time, I was already suspicious of you, because you also said that in Easton, both humans and elves are the subjects of the Lord of Nature. After that, before we went to look for lilac intoxicant, when you looked at my spirit wings, there was a hint of greed hidden in your eyes. My senses are very high. Perhaps you thought that you had hidden it flawlessly, but I still noticed it. It was too easy to obtain intoxicating lilac. Since it's a sacred herb, why didn't you plant it in the cave you mentioned? Also, you said that you only left a small camouflage spell there, but according to my soul detection, there was an offensive spell at the place you left the camouflage spell, and the power of that spell is already comparable to a forbidden spell. Although all of this made me suspicious, it's not the most important thing. What really confirmed my suspicions was your concealment of your abilities. When we approached Mount Easton, you landed on the ground and walked forward. At that time, I sensed King Easton's soul ripples. Although he was about to take an afternoon nap, his powerful senses covered a large area. However, due to the natural elemental ripples in the air, he missed some spots. As we advanced, you kept directing me to change directions, which was actually to avoid King Easton's senses. In other words, your senses are definitely not inferior to mine. With such senses, how can you be as simple as a mere grade 8 magus? Also, you moved according to your senses because you were clearly worried about the concealment ability of my domain. Apart from these discoveries, there's also my understanding of the world of Easton. I can honestly tell you that I don't belong to this world, but I possess the same light as this world. My soul power is far above yours, even above King Easton. When you went to retrieve the lilac intoxicating spell, I used my soul power to communicate with the natural souls of the crab world. When I communicated with them through a large tree, I sensed their faith and their emotions towards King Easton. I used my soul to ask them questions, but none of the creatures that answered my questions had any hostility towards King Easton. That was when I confirmed my judgment, but I still followed you because I wanted to see what your goal was. If I exposed you at that time, it would undoubtedly be leaving a ticking time bomb in the world of Easton. I was also curious about your goal, which was why I still followed you. Fortunately, your explanation of the lilac intoxicating spell was correct. It could only intoxicate people, but not harm them. Otherwise, I would have done it long ago. At that, Long Houchen revealed a faint smile, making him look even more charming with his handsome face. The smartest thing about you is that 90% of what you told me was true, and only the crucial 10% was false. Coupled with the sincerity in your eyes and your own beauty, it was indeed very easy for people to fall for it. However, even a wise man makes mistakes sometimes. Moreover, you've revealed so many flaws. Before you entered the cave, my palm did indeed amplify your power, but that was under the premise that everything you said was true. You didn't resist my power in order to gain my trust. If I'm not mistaken, you immediately used your water power to guide my light power out of your body after entering the cave. Unfortunately, you couldn't guide my domain out of your body. In terms of cultivation, you're not weaker than me. In fact, you might even be stronger than me. However, after my domain invaded your body and took root, even someone of your cultivation couldn't neutralize it. The name of my domain is called Life Process Control. Perhaps I can't really turn you back to your adorable age like I did with that gorilla, but I can at least seal you for 2 hours. Am I right? Your Majesty, Yu Yi. Queen Yu Yi said unwillingly, but you still fought King Easton. Aren't you afraid that he'll kill you? What if you can't defeat him? How can you be so confident in yourself? Long Houchen said, That's right. I'm not sure if I can defeat King Easton, but I'm confident that he won't kill me. You can't think of this because you don't have enough understanding of light and nature. What's the source of life? It's light and water. It's only under the influence of light and water that nature is born. I fought King Easton to further confirm his abilities. Just as I expected, King Easton has extremely pure natural elemental energy and a domain of life. How can an evil person possess such pure life aura? At the same time, I displayed my domain in front of King Easton. Although it's the first time we've met, judging from our attributes alone, it's impossible for us to become true enemies. Naturally, we won't try to kill each other in battle. I've already made this judgment before I came here. What's there to be afraid of? Long Houchen spoke calmly, but his words were reasonable. His voice was calm, but to Yu Ye's Queen Cece, it was like a clap of thunder. Without the influence of the destructive force of life, King Easton had already reached Long Houchen's side. He glanced at him and said, Smart humans are truly terrifying. Fortunately, you didn't make a grave mistake. Long Houchen made an inviting gesture and said, Since you're in charge of the Tree of Destruction, please take it back. Cece no longer had any power to resist. Although she was holding the sapling of the Tree of Destruction, she could no longer borrow its terrifying power. However, King Easton did not go to retrieve the Tree of Destruction. Instead, he frowned. Cece sneered. You're smart indeed. However, do you think you can stop the Tree of Destruction's growth like this? You can kill me, but in the near future, when the Tree of Destruction grows, the world of Easton will become its nutrients. When that happens, you'll all die. Long Houchen frowned slightly and said, Isn't it just a little sapling? Can't I destroy it right now? Cece laughed hysterically despite her young age. What a joke, what a joke. Looks like you really don't belong to the world of Easton. The Tree of Destruction is the same as the Tree of Eternity. They're both eternal and indestructible. Once its seed sprouts in the divine stone of sun and moon, it can never be destroyed. If you don't believe me, you can let that dwarf beside you try. His power is comparable to a god's. Ask him if he can destroy the Tree of Destruction. Chapter 263. Long Houchen immediately turned to King Easton and gave him a questioning look. King Easton nodded solemnly. She's right. The Tree of Destruction is irreversible once it starts growing. We can only try our best to seal the sapling and slow down its growth. Then, I'll pray to the Master of Nature and see if he can separate a branch from the Tree of Eternity to seal the Tree of Destruction completely. Although King Easton did not blame him, Long Houchen could still hear the dissatisfaction in his tone. He apologized. I'm sorry, King Easton. I was too careless. I didn't expect Queen Yu Yi to have such a grand plan. However, I have to say that your defense against the Tree of Destruction's seed is not very tight. King Easton was a little annoyed. Who knew she had such a plan? If you hadn't stopped me, I would have discovered that she was going to attack the Tree of Destruction's seed a long time ago, and I would have had enough time to stop her. Long Houchen said, This started because of me, so let me be the one to end it. When I entered this place, I sensed the aura of destruction. King Easton, I'll ask you one last time. Do you really want to destroy the Tree of Destruction so that it will never appear again? King Easton said with a bitter expression, Of course. My lord couldn't destroy it, but he also couldn't let it affect the Tree of Eternity in my lord's divine realm. That's why he gave it to me to look after. Who knew that such a problem would occur? Long Houchen nodded. If that's the case, leave it to me. Actually, it's not that difficult to destroy the tree of destruction. As he spoke, he turned around and raised his right hand, beckoning at the tree of destruction. A dazzling golden sword gleam shot towards the tree of eternity in Cece's hand. Cece still had a sneer on her face, and her lips curled into a disdainful smile. Although she had failed today, she had already sacrificed her dark soul to the tree of destruction in the process of praying. As long as the tree of destruction could grow in the near future, there was still a chance for her soul to recover. Ding! The sword ray landed on the tree of destruction and produced a clear buzzing sound. A layer of faint purple mist formed a layer of light that protected the tree of destruction. Long Houchen's sword ray didn't even have a chance to cause any purple light before it was extinguished. Long Houchen nodded slowly and said, "It does have a very strong defense." Cece said disdainfully, "What's very strong? It is indestructible." Long Houchen smiled, "Don't be too confident. In this world, nothing is impossible." As he spoke, he slowly raised his hands and made a grasping motion in the air. Then 9 purplish gold light patterns slowly appeared on his forehead. When the 9 lines of light appeared, Long Houchen's face, which was originally filled with the aura of light, had an additional layer of demonic charm. Even King Easton was shocked. However, he soon realized that Long Houchen's heart of light had not changed at all. Only the power had changed a little. Afterwards, King Easton and Cece saw a huge sword extend from Long Houchen's grasping hands. The purplish gold body of the sword was dazzling, especially the 6 heads on the hilt. All of them radiated with a cold gaze, as if they were observing everything around them. As soon as the purple gold heavy sword appeared, the god artifact in King Easton's hands and the god artifact armor he was wearing began to buzz softly. King Easton said in surprise, "My treasure is in fear. What kind of sword is that?" Long Houchen smiled, "Since I'm going to destroy the tree of destruction, I'll call it Destroyer's Kill. Its full name shall be Destroyer's Kill, Purplish Gold Hauyua Sword." As he spoke, the purplish gold Hauyua sword in his hand had already turned into a streak of light and slashed at the tree of destruction in Cece's hands. This time, Cece felt a great threat. She wasn't afraid of the tree of destruction being attacked, but she was behind the tree of destruction. She didn't have as strong a defense as the tree of destruction. Be it humans or elves, they all had a strong desire to live. Almost subconsciously, Cece let go of the divine stone of sun and moon in her hand. The purplish gold light flashed like lightning and struck the tree of destruction in midair. The layer of purple light appeared on the tree of destruction again. However, it was different from the sword intent that Long Houchen had instantly dispersed. This time, when the purple light came into contact with the purplish gold Hauyua sword, the two actually stuck together. In other words, the tree of destruction that was attached to the divine stone of sun and moon seemed to be stuck in the air by the purplish gold Hauyua sword. The sapling of the tree of destruction trembled violently on the divine stone of sun and moon. The layers of purple light became even more intense, and there were even some sparkling purple starlight. The purplish gold Hauyua sword was still flowing with purplish gold light. However, the 6 huge eyes on the hilt were all open, as if they had come alive. They stared coldly at the struggling tree of destruction. "No, that's impossible," Cece said in a daze. "The power of destruction nurtured by the tree of destruction, even in its initial state, can instantly destroy any power that attacks it. How can it resist?" Just as she stared in disbelief, the tip of the purplish gold Hauyua sword suddenly changed. The originally sharp blade instantly turned into a huge mouth. It bit through the layer of power of destruction emitted by the tree of destruction and bit the sapling directly. With a strong tug, it actually tore the sapling from the divine stone of sun and moon. Then, it opened its mouth and swallowed. The tree of destruction immediately turned into a ball of purple light and disappeared without a trace in the aura of the purplish gold Haoyue sword. Long Haochen raised his right hand and sucked the divine stone of sun and moon into his hand. He turned to the completely stunned King Easton and asked, "Is this yours?" King Easton shook his head and said subconsciously, "This is a natural treasure nurtured by nature. It doesn't belong to me. You snatched it back, so it's yours. But, did you really destroy the tree of destruction?" Long Haochen smiled and said, "I think so. Don't worry, there won't be a problem." When he entered King Easton's cave and sensed the destructive intent, Haoyue's emotions appeared in Long Haochen's heart. Haoyue was filled with desire for the power of destruction and constantly urged Long Haochen to snatch it. However, this was King Easton's territory. Naturally, Long Haochen would not do that before he knew the truth. At the same time, with Haoyue's hint, he became even more suspicious of Cece. Haoyue also told him clearly that although the power of destruction was pure and powerful, it was not enough to cause any harm to it. It could only be used as nourishment. With this, it could complete its final evolution in the shortest time possible. This was also the first time Haoyue told Long Haochen that it was close to completing its final evolution. The reason why Long Haochen repeatedly asked King Easton if he wanted to destroy the Tree of Destruction was so that he could legitimately provide nourishment to Haoyue. He was not sure if the Tree of Destruction was really destroyed, but there was one thing he was sure of. Haoyue would never spit out anything it ate, especially since Haoyue had told him earlier that the Tree of Destruction was not on the same level as it was. There was no possibility of a backlash. Cece was completely dumbfounded. Her last hope had been dashed. Suddenly, she screamed and clutched her head, rolling on the ground in pain. No matter how beautiful a girl was, screaming in pain would not look good. Long Haochen was shocked, but he could not touch the seal on his domain skill at the moment. "King Easton, what's wrong with her? She must have sacrificed all the darkness in her soul to the Tree of Destruction. Now that the Tree of Destruction has been completely destroyed, the darkness in her soul has also been shattered. She has lost a part of her soul, which is why she is in so much pain. Look, the darkness in her body is starting to dissipate. Haha, Queen Yu Yi of the Night Elves has lost her power of darkness. Easton will be peaceful for a long time in the future, without the threat of the Tree of Destruction. Friend, thank you. My friendship will be with you forever." Although the Night Elves were not a great threat to King Easton, they had always disturbed the peace of Easton, especially after Queen Yu Yi had done something like this. This naturally made him even more vigilant. Now that Queen Yu Yi Cece's soul had been damaged and she had lost her power of darkness, the Night Elves had lost their leader. Naturally, they could not cause any more trouble. What made King Easton even happier was that the most troublesome Tree of Destruction had been completely destroyed by Long Haochen. From now on, he could rest easy. With his cultivation, nothing in the Eastern world could pose a threat to him. At this moment, Long Haochen had a sudden thought. He subconsciously summoned the cracked aria of the Goddess of Light and Blue Rain, Hibiscus of Light. The two divine swords had left irreparable marks in the collision just now. Their auras were extremely weak, but at this moment, Long Haochen sensed a weak yet familiar aura of life from the two divine swords. Almost without any hesitation, Long Haochen said to King Easton, "I need your domain of life to strengthen me. Help me." King Easton answered without hesitation, "No problem. Come." As he spoke, his aquamarine life celestial domain had already expanded and enveloped Long Haochen's body completely. Long Haochen slowly raised the two divine swords in the air and stared at them with a burning gaze. He took a deep breath and steadied his mind. In the next moment, he slowly brought the swords together, which could shatter at any time. Rainbow light rose from the domain of light and completely enveloped the two divine swords. They were about to fuse together, and the aura of life and creation appeared. However, this power was too much of a burden for the two divine swords that were already damaged. They began to buzz softly. Long Houchen growled, "Without destruction, there can be no construction. She had sacrificed a great deal to nurture you two. Now, please truly fuse with them." Boom! The swords of life and creation immediately exploded, turning into countless specks of light. Among these specks of light, the largest was a ball of golden light. Long Houchen's gaze locked onto that ball of golden light. At the same time, all the shattered specks of light were enveloped by his domain of light. Time stopped, and the power to control the progress of life instantly enveloped these specks of light. A ray of rainbow light shot out from Long Houchen's chest, accompanied by his rapidly beating heart of eternity. It was directly injected into the golden speck of light. Immediately, the golden speck of light began to expand and stretch at an alarming rate. The aura of life also became denser and denser. It was as if a small golden embryo was being nurtured. A humanoid figure gradually appeared. Immediately after, the humanoid figure began to expand, and its body began to stretch. There were even 3 pairs of small light wings on its back. Her appearance also gradually became clearer. She was beautiful and gentle, but also so transparent and weak. Wasn't she Yiting? Back then, when Long Houchen was killed by the Demon Emperor in the Star Demon Tower, his heart was completely shattered. And where Yiting was also the acupuncture point next to Long Houchen's heart. The might of the Demon God Emperor's attack was really too great, to the point that Yiting's fairy body instantly collapsed. Only her soul, which had been absorbed by the divine sword during the battle between her life and the creation sword, was able to escape this calamity. However, her soul was also extremely weak and fell into a deep slumber. Ever since he was resurrected, Long Houchen had been cultivating while searching for traces of Yiting. After such a long period of hard work, accompanied by the evolution of his cultivation base, he finally discovered a possibility. Yiting had truly been turned into a sword spirit by the 2 divine swords. Only when they fused to become the life and creation swords could Long Houchen sense a trace of Yiting's aura. However, even though he knew that Yiting's soul might still exist, Long Houchen did not dare to act rashly. If he shattered the 2 divine swords, Yiting's soul might immediately disperse. It was better to continue staying in the divine swords. Everything that happened before him finally gave Long Houchen enough opportunity. The evolved light god's domain allowed him to grasp the miraculous ability of the life process. He was using the power of his domain to urge Yiting's weakened soul to evolve. This process was complicated and troublesome. It would also greatly deplete Long Houchen's strength, but he had King Easton by his side as a great supplement. Therefore, when he released the power of his domain, he could continuously amplify it without any worries. Gradually, Yiting's body stabilized, and Long Houchen let out a long sigh. At least he could be sure that Yiting's soul would not disperse in this state. The following process was even more complicated. Long Houchen began to slowly pour the power of the 2 shattered divine swords into Yiting's body. With his pure light god's domain, Yiting's soul was gradually enhanced to an extremely powerful level. It must not be forgotten that Yiting had fused with the Saint's spiritual stove before, and the Saint's spiritual stove's nurturing power was also in slumber in her soul. This time, they were awakened at the same time. Whether it was the aria of the goddess of light or the blue rain, hibiscus of light, they had both been nurtured by Yiting for a long time. Now that they were shattered, they were absorbed into Yiting's body and turned into pure energy to fuse with Yiting's soul. It was not difficult, but it required a lot of external power. King Easton's jade-green life dominion could be seen hovering in the air. Within the life dominion was Long Houchen's light god's domain, which shone with rainbow light. At the very center was Yiting, who was emitting a gentle golden light. After receiving the power from the 2 shattered divine swords, Yiting's body gradually became more solid. The heart-wrenching feeling of weakness was also gradually decreasing. What Long Houchen had poured into her was not just the power from the two shattered divine swords. More importantly, it was a tremendous life force guided by light. For fairies, even elemental fairies, their thirst for life force was extremely great. Not to mention that Long Houchen had long since stopped treating Yiting as a pure elemental fairy. King Easton was indeed powerful. His life dominion did not show any signs of weakening despite being continuously absorbed by Long Houchen's light god's domain. Furthermore, large amounts of life force could be seen surging into Long Houchen's light god's domain, continuously strengthening him. As the ruler of this world, King Easton had supreme authority here. He was the spokesperson of the Lord of Nature and the controller of life force. If not for Long Houchen's light god's domain restraining him too much, he would not have been suppressed to the point where he could not do anything. With the powerful support of this ally, Long Houchen's original difficulty in reconstructing Yiting's body was fundamentally resolved. At the same time, he used his greatly evolved soul power to continuously control his light god's domain. While helping Yiting reconstruct her body, he also comprehended the various changes brought about by the evolution of his domain, as well as the profoundness of controlling domains. With this comprehension, he could be considered to have truly grasped the profound meaning of rank 3. Long Houchen's newly comprehended domain, controlling the process of life, could be said to have endless uses. Its only flaw was that it did not have very strong offensive and defensive abilities. Against opponents weaker than him, this domain was an absolutely invincible weapon. It could even undergo various changes. However, if the opponent also had a powerful domain, then his domain would only be effective in certain aspects. In terms of offensive power, it was not even comparable to the divine light wall. Of course, as he comprehended this domain, his light god's domain took a huge step forward. It had already evolved to an even more terrifying level. Finally, when the last fragment of the divine sword had fused with Yiting's body, Long Houchen's domain stopped activating. Yiting's entire body emitted a gentle golden halo. Her eyes were wide open as she looked at Long Houchen's pale complexion from activating the domain for a long time. Her eyes were already filled with tears. However, the current her couldn't make a sound. The enormous spiritual power within her body was also undergoing an earth-shaking fusion. The nurturing power of the saint's spiritual stove produced a huge effect at this moment. With the help of Long Houchen's light god's domain, all of the different energies that she had absorbed into her body were completely fused. In this way, not only did Yiting complete the reconstruction of her body, she also became more solid than before. Within the gentle light element, there was also a portion of spiritual power that belonged to the divine sword. Circles of white halos began to emit from Yiting's body. At this time, she had already completed the fusion. Long Houchen had done what he could. The next level that Yiting could improve would depend on her own effort. Long Houchen waved his left hand, and Queen Yu Ye's body, which had become motionless in the distance, was suddenly pulled over by him through the air. At this time, Queen Yu Yi was completely silent. She had lost her dark soul. Although her body still had a breath of life, in fact, she was just a walking corpse, a shell without a soul. Long Houchen's left hand pressed on the top of Queen Yu Ye's head. The light god's domain instantly rushed into her body, and the seal on her body was lifted first. Immediately, the Night Queen's body grew rapidly. However, because she had shrunk earlier, her clothes had fallen off. Previously, she was only 3 or 4 years old, so it didn't seem like much. Now that she had grown up again, her fair, translucent, and flawless body appeared in the sight of Long Houchen and King Easton. As if he had encountered a ghost, King Easton quickly turned his head away and muttered something inaudible. The beard on his face trembled, as if he, who was not afraid of anything, was actually afraid of a woman's naked body. Long Houchen's willpower was much stronger than his. He only quickly closed his eyes to prevent himself from looking at indecent things, but his actions didn't change. the light god's domain entered Queen Yu Ye's body. At this time, Queen Yu Ye had lost her soul, and all that was left was a shell. However, the spiritual power in her body was still very strong. After Long Houchen's spiritual power entered her body, he first examined her. He discovered that Queen Yu Ye was a dual elemental existence of darkness and water. The strength of her spiritual power was about the same as before his evolution, and her cultivation was also at the second level of the 9th rank. Although she was much inferior to King Easton, it shouldn't be forgotten that she was a dual elemental at the second level of the 9th rank. The light force began to bloom in her body in an attempt to expel the dark spiritual power in her body. However, Long Houchen soon discovered that it was futile. The dark element in Queen Yu Ye's body was very stubborn. Although she had lost the guidance of her soul, unless Long Houchen completely destroyed her body, it was impossible to cleanse her of the dark element. Obviously, this was because the Queen of Darkness's power came from her bloodline. The stubbornness of the dark element brought about by her bloodline was definitely not something that awakened after birth could compare to. It's useless. Don't waste your energy. Queen Yu Ye is the leader of the Night Elves. Her dark element is deeply rooted in her body. Although King Easton turned away from Long Houchen's actions, his senses were still there. He naturally knew what Long Houchen was doing. After all, Yiting was an elemental elf. In a sense, she was only an existence in the form of a soul. No matter how solid her soul was, it was still a soul. Long Houchen wanted to find a body for her, and Queen Yu Ye, who had lost her soul, was clearly the most suitable. Since they were both elves, it was much easier for an elemental elf to fuse with a real elf than with other races. However, the prerequisite was that their attributes had to be the same, and there would be no rejection. King Easton was the wielder of the power of life, so he naturally understood this. He also knew what Long Houchen was trying to do, but he did not think that Long Houchen could succeed. Long Houchen thought for a moment, then said, "Perhaps there's only one other way." As he spoke, he raised his right hand and slowly pressed it on Queen Yu Ye's perky left breast. King Easton could not help but jump in fright when he sensed Long Houchen's actions. He hurriedly said, "Friend, don't let your heart of light waver." He was afraid that Long Houchen would be blinded by lust and do something he shouldn't. If that really happened, his power of light would no longer be pure. Long Houchen shook his head gently. Then, the hand he pressed on Queen Yu Ye's chest glowed faintly red. Drops of blood appeared on his fingers at the same time, then slowly seeped into Queen Yu Ye's skin. You're. King Easton could no longer care about Queen Yu Ye's naked body. He turned around abruptly and looked at Long Houchen in a daze. "Is this worth it? Even if you succeed, you'll definitely be greatly injured. Even if an elemental fairy doesn't have a body, she'll follow you forever." Long Houchen shook his head gently. "Yiting isn't just an elemental fairy. She's also my partner. I've never treated her as a follower. She's my friend. If I miss this opportunity, perhaps she'll never have a physical body again. Yiting has already sacrificed a lot for me. So what if I'm only injured a little?" Long Houchen had done the same thing once before. It was on Night's sacred mountain. To save Hao Yue's life, he used his own blood to change Hao Yue's attribute. That's right. If he wanted to remove the darkness in Yu Ye's bloodline, he could only use the power of his bloodline to cleanse it. Long Houchen wanted to use his own blood to replace Queen Yu Ye's dark constitution. He wanted to use the pure God of Light's bloodline to create the most perfect body for Yiting. In the air, Yiting's body was trembling slightly. Her emotions were fluctuating violently. However, her fusion was not complete yet. Moreover, she was under the control of Long Houchen's God of Light domain. She couldn't move at all. She could only watch as drops of blood from Long Houchen's hand entered Queen Yu Ye's body. Large drops of tears continuously fell from Yiting's eyes. She was so glad that she had made the choice back then. Looking at Long Houchen, she suddenly felt that her emotions had become rich and colorful. It was as if she was truly alive and not just an elemental body. She slowly closed her eyes, and the light emitted from her body became even more resplendent. Long Houchen had used his actions to help Yiting understand a higher level of the heart of light. Her soul had also begun to evolve along with her elemental body. Long Houchen was no longer the Long Houchen of the past. Back then, he had almost bled to death in order to save Haoyue's life. If not for Haoyue's timely blood nourishment, he would have died long ago. However, things were different now. He possessed the constitution of the God of Light. Whether it was in the holy demon continent or the Eastern world, it was the purest constitution of light. When his first drop of the God of Light's blood entered Yu Ye's body, the darkness bloodline in Yu Ye's body fluctuated greatly. If Queen Yu Ye's soul was still present, she could still control her power to forcefully reject it and cause trouble for Long Houchen. However, she had already lost her soul. Without a leader, the power of darkness could only struggle chaotically. Drop after drop of the God of Light's blood flowed into Yu Ye's body. When the impure darkness encountered the purest light, the result was obvious. The black was gradually replaced by gold. One could clearly see layers of black mist spreading from Yu Ye's body. Her skin became even more crystalline, and a faint layer of gold began to appear. King Easton's eyes were filled with respect. This was the first time he had felt such emotions towards a human. He ruled over the elves under his command, but even the kind elves could not compare to this man's character. He slowly flew behind Long Houchen and pressed his hands on his back. A ball of green light lit up on his chest, shining on Long Houchen's body. One could vaguely see a green leaf shining on King Easton's chest. It was one of the 7 leaves of eternity at the top of the tree of eternity. It was also the source of King Easton's power. He was mobilizing his own life force and the tree of eternity's boundless life force to help Long Houchen. With King Easton's support, Long Houchen's heart of eternity beat at least twice as fast. With this rapid beating, the circulation of his bloodline became even stronger. With the immense life force, his weakness was instantly swept away. His blood was now filled with even more life force. It became easier to purge Queen Yu Ye's dark bloodline. Finally, when the last bit of darkness was purged from Yu Ye's body, her entire body radiated with a holy light. Faint halos flowed under her fair skin, making her look like a perfect statue. At that moment, the fusion of Yu Ye's power was finally completed. An intense pillar of white light shot into the sky, connecting the top and bottom of the cavern. Under the holy light, the 3 pairs of wings on Yu Ye's back became 4. At the same time, a golden ray of light about an inch long appeared on her forehead. Amidst the gentleness, her aura contained an indescribable holiness and sharpness. Her originally excited gaze became calm as she silently stared at Long Houchen, like a child looking at her father. There was reverence, love, and countless other positive emotions. Long Houchen smiled and said, "Yiting, this body should be able to contain your soul. Come, as long as the fusion is successful, you will be a real elf." Lightly nodding her head, Yiting flew in front of Long Houchen and said, "Master, no matter what Yiting becomes, you will always be my master." Long Houchen rubbed her head and said, "Silly girl, don't say that. If it wasn't for me, your soul wouldn't have been nearly shattered. I'm really happy that I can help you reconstruct your body. I've always treated you like a younger sister. From now on, you will be my younger sister. If you're willing, you can follow my surname and call me Big Brother Shing." Yiting's red lips slightly trembled as she suddenly threw herself into Long Houchen's embrace. "Big Brother." Her voice was filled with sincerity. That's right, the body she was about to fuse with contained Long Houchen's blood. When she fused with that body, she could truly be considered as Long Houchen's family. Long Houchen gently stroked her back and said, "Don't cry. This is a happy day." Suddenly, Yiting raised her head and wrapped her arms around Long Houchen's neck. She gazed at him with teary eyes and said, "Master, before you become my big brother." With that, she suddenly kissed Long Houchen's lips as fast as lightning. She was too fast, and everything happened too suddenly. Long Houchen still had to maintain the state of Yu Yi Queen's body, so he was instantly kissed. At this moment, Yiting was still in her elemental body. Her lips were cold, but they contained an indescribable emotion. Long Houchen was in a daze, while King Easton, who was behind him, had a strange expression on his face. An elf's kiss was one of the most precious things in their lives. Elves were a race that was extremely loyal to one person. Even the elven king would only have one lover in his life. The way they dedicated their body and soul to their lover was by offering their kiss to express their undying loyalty and no regret. Although Yiting was still an elemental elf, King Easton knew from the golden pattern on her forehead that once she obtained her own body, she would definitely become an existence on the same level as the elven king. She would be even more powerful than Queen Yu Yi Queen. Long Houchen had acknowledged her as his sister, but she had already given all her feelings to him. She probably didn't know about the customs of the elves, right? Yiting's kiss was very short. She raised her head gently and looked at Long Houchen. "Master, if there really is an afterlife, I don't want to be your sister. I want to be your lover." After saying that, her figure suddenly flashed, and she had already merged with the body of Yu Yi Queen, whose dark aura had been completely removed. Yiting's kiss and words filled Long Houchen's heart with shock. It was even more shocking than the battle with King Easton. Although he didn't know what an elf's kiss meant, he could feel Yiting's feelings for him. However, he couldn't accept this feeling, because his heart was already filled with the green bamboo cane, the blind girl of the past, and the love of the present. Queen Yu Yi Queen's body began to emit an intense golden light. Her soul and body were beginning to completely merge. Yiting's body did not just merge with Queen Yu Yi Queen's body. There was also her pure light attribute and powerful elemental body. After completing the previous fusion, Yiting's cultivation had risen to the 9th stage. Merging with Queen Yu Yi Queen's body, which had been baptized by Long Houchen's bloodline, was as easy as water flowing when the conditions were right. However, this way, Long Houchen's bloodline flowed in her body, and she could no longer have any emotional entanglement with him. Before she had a body, she had yearned for the day she could become a true elf, and not a pure elemental elf. However, when she really fused with a body, her heart was filled with reluctance. Chapter 264. Yiting had followed Long Houchen for a long time. From the moment she started to follow Long Houchen, she knew about the relationship between Long Houchen and Kai Er. Because she knew Long Houchen very well, she knew that it was impossible for her and Long Houchen to be together, even if they had a body. Since that was the case, she could only settle for the next best thing, which was to be his sister, a sister who would share life and death with him. Goddess Yuye's body slowly floated up, and pairs of light golden transparent wings slowly spread out behind her. This meant that Yiting's body fusion was going very smoothly. 1 pair, 2 pairs, 3 pairs, 4 pairs. When there were 4 pairs of wings, a faint smile appeared on Long Houchen's face. This meant that after the fusion, at least Yiting's cultivation did not weaken. At this moment, the 5th pair of wings suddenly unfurled. Unlike the previous 4 pairs, this 5th pair of wings was actually light blue in color, not light gold. Success! Long Houchen clenched his fists excitedly. Although he had removed the dark attribute from Queen Yuye's body, he had kept the water attribute. Water and light were both sources of life, and they were compatible with each other. Coupled with Long Houchen's light god bloodline, Yiting's body would be even more perfect. In terms of bloodline, Yiting might be slightly inferior to Long Houchen's, but with 2 attributes, she could also use the power of life creation. Following closely behind the 5th pair of wings was the 6th pair of wings. In total, there were 6 pairs of wings. 12 wings slowly unfurled behind Yiting's back. 8 of them were golden in color, while the other 4 were blue. The spiritual energy fluctuations coming from Yiting's body were extremely astonishing. Faintly, a 7-colored halo was being emitted from her body. This was similar to the effect of Long Houchen's evolved light god domain. However, the difference was that within this 7-colored halo, there were 3 colors that were the most eye-catching, while the other 4 colors were gradually fading away, as if they were being devoured by these 3 colors. The 3 eye-catching colors were gold, blue, and green. The 3-colored halo circled around Yiting's body, and the most powerful was gold. Queen Yu Ye's original black hair was completely dyed gold, while the blue turned into a long dress, and the green became the color of Yiting's eyes. At this moment, the aura Yiting was even stronger than Long Houchen's. The tricolored light formed the ripples of a domain, and its power was already close to King Easton. King Easton came to Long Houchen's side and bowed slightly to Yiting. "Welcome, Elven Queen of Light." Yiting nodded slightly at King Easton. Her aquamarine eyes were full of vitality, and she looked at Long Houchen with a gentle gaze. She made a few gestures in front of her chest, and a strange light pattern immediately floated out and flew towards Long Houchen's chest. Long Houchen was slightly stunned. He didn't quite understand what Yiting was trying to do, but he believed that Yiting wouldn't harm him, so he instinctively accepted the light pattern. The light pattern entered his hand and instantly disappeared into his body. Immediately after, Long Houchen's body shook violently, and he and Yiting trembled at the same time. A golden bridge quickly appeared between the two of them, connecting them with their chests. Long Houchen felt his spiritual energy rising at an alarming rate. Originally, he had the Heart of Eternity increasing his spiritual energy by 90,000. After breaking through to the 3rd level of the 9th order, his spiritual energy had exceeded 300,000. At this time, he felt his acupuncture points opening up from top to bottom along his spine. In just a short while, his internal spiritual energy had increased by more than 50,000, reaching the level of 350,000. However, there was no joy on his face. There was only a hint of helplessness. "Yiting, why do you have to do this?" "Yiting, no, Yiting should be called Long Houchen now." Having inherited the beautiful looks of Yu Yi Queen Cece, she smiled at Long Houchen. "My body and life were given to me by Big Brother. If Big Brother is gone one day, then what's the point of me living? Moreover, the contract has been completed. It can't be changed." It turned out that the seemingly simple rune just now was actually Yiting's blood contract. She had Long Houchen's bloodline in her body. After completing the blood contract, she gave it back to Long Houchen. Relying on her stronger cultivation than Long Houchen, she forcibly concealed the aura of the blood contract. So much so that Long Houchen didn't notice it. After the blood contract was completed, Long Houchen was naturally affected by the contract, and his cultivation greatly increased, just like his relationship with Haoyue. The 12 wings on her back stretched out, and Yiting flashed to Long Houchen's side. She hugged his left arm and giggled. "With the blood contract connected, Big Brother will never leave me." Long Houchen rubbed her head helplessly. "You're such a silly girl." King Easton looked at Long Houchen, then at Yiting. A smile appeared on his face as he mumbled, "This should be the best ending." At this moment, the time around them froze again. While Long Houchen was slightly shocked, the emotionless voice rang out in his mind again. "You did not lose yourself in the midst of benefit. You searched for true knowledge in the midst of illusions, cleansed the darkness with light, and molded between light and water. You have passed the first test. King Easton's admiration and friendliness is your greatest reward from this test." Hearing that, Long Houchen's first thought was that it was as he expected. This was probably a hint from the throne of God of eternity and creation. He did not have to follow it, and there might even be misdirection in between. If he had not discovered Queen Yuye's scheme, or followed the hint even after discovering it, he might have already failed the test. This was a test from the throne of God of eternity and creation. It was not just a test of strength, but also of humanity, wisdom, and many other aspects. However, this was only the first test. What would the subsequent tests be? At this moment, a loud dragon's roar suddenly reverberated in the cave. Long Houchen jumped in fright, while King Easton's expression immediately darkened. Is there no end to it? The holy dragon has come to harass my Easton again just because it's the god of creation's mount. As he spoke, King Easton had already dashed out of the cave. Long Houchen knew that the holy dragon's arrival was closely related to his upcoming test. He dared not tarry and hurriedly flew out with Yiting. After leaving the cave, he and Yiting subconsciously looked up at the sky, because the originally clear blue sky had changed color. The entire sky was filled with a dense holy aura. It was dignified and oppressive, and the world of Easton that was illuminated by the rainbow light also changed color. King Easton hovered in the air, staring into the distance with a burning gaze. A speck of light was flying in his direction. Long Houchen's eyesight was extremely good, but before he could focus his gaze, the existence that was previously just a speck of light was already magnified in his vision. It was a dragon, a real dragon. It had no wings, and its slender body was over 30 meters long. Its body was covered in golden scales, and it had 5 claws under its abdomen and 2 horns on its head. Its dignified eyes stared in their direction. As it rapidly approached, all the rainbow light in the sky rippled. King Easton roared angrily, "Holy dragon, are you done yet? You come to my place for a stroll when you have nothing better to do. Are you that bored? I just don't know if you have that thing." The holy dragon snorted coldly. "Shorty, aren't you just afraid that your believers will change their faith? If you can, come to my divine dragon island. I'm not here for you today. This is God's will. Human, defeat me. That is the second test you must face." King Easton was just about to say something when a ray of emerald light suddenly descended from the sky and shone on him. King Easton immediately shivered. He did not say the words that were at the tip of his tongue, and could only shake his head apologetically at Long Houchen. That was the pure power of nature, filled with boundless vitality. The only thing that could make King Easton feel helpless was his faith, the power of the Lord of Nature. It was obvious that the test of the throne of God of eternity and creation would not lower its difficulty just because of his relationship with King Easton. What Long Houchen did not know was that his second test was supposed to last an hour under the holy dragon's attack without being defeated. However, because he had revived Yiting, the test's difficulty had increased. Since it was a test, it could not be avoided. There was no point in saying anything more. Long Houchen nodded at the holy dragon and said, "Please." As he spoke, his figure flashed, and he turned into a ray of golden light that soared into the sky. As he flew, his light god's domain expanded as well, as if avoiding the holy dragon's domain that covered the entire horizon. At the same time, a ball of rainbow light shone as Long Houchen flew. When he rose thousands of meters into the sky, there was already a holy unicorn beneath him. Although the battle had yet to begin, Long Houchen already had a rough idea of the holy dragon's strength. As the most powerful magical beast he knew, and a powerhouse that even King Easton could not handle, the holy dragon's cultivation was probably at least above level 9 5th rank. More terrifyingly, its physical strength was definitely not inferior to its spiritual power. The only thing that gave Long Houchen a chance was his own domain. All holy creatures mainly focused on light, and his light god's domain could be said to be the source of all light attribute. It was enough to restrain the holy dragon's abilities in this aspect. That was why he wanted to try and see what would happen when his domain came into contact with the holy dragon's domain. The moment the two domains came into contact in the sky, King Easton, who was watching the battle from afar, immediately felt a strange sensation. When Long Houchen's light god's domain crashed into the holy dragon's domain, it was like a hot iron smashing into a large piece of butter. It sizzled and sizzled as it sank into the holy dragon's domain. The sky was also filled with rainbow light, but the holy domain lacked the golden foundation of the light god's domain. It surged and spread rapidly, but not only did it fail to suppress Long Houchen even managed to occupy a corner of the sky. What pure light energy! No wonder you're qualified for me to take action. The holy dragon looked curiously at Long Houchen, but it did not stop moving. A rainbow-colored breath shot straight at Long Houchen. Long Houchen's expression was calm as he rode on the holy unicorn. A faint smile appeared on his face. As he raised his right hand, the rainbow-colored light from the light god's domain immediately burst forth like a tsunami. As it rapidly dispersed the holy dragon's holy domain, it also collided with the dragon's breath. The holy dragon's breath was rapidly weakened, but after the golden part of the rainbow-colored light disappeared, the other colors continued to rush towards Long Houchen. Without waiting for Long Houchen to make a move, Yiting's figure flashed and appeared in front of Long Houchen. The 12 wings on her back spread open, and her right hand pointed at the sudden attack. A huge sword of light over 100 meters long appeared out of thin air. With a flash of light, it cut through the holy dragon's breath and flew straight at the holy dragon's body. At the same time, a layer of domain energy condensed around Yiting's body. It was also of the light attribute, but it was completely different from Long Houchen's light god's domain. Yiting's light was like the noon sun, dazzling and fierce. The huge sword of light that was over 100 meters long flashed with dazzling golden light in the sky. It was filled with the aura of a ruler as it advanced courageously. Was this a domain technique? However, wasn't it too easy for Yiting to use her domain technique? She wasn't prepared at all. However, the huge golden sword clearly had the aura of her domain. The holy dragon was also taken aback. As the one bearing the sword, it could sense the aura from the giant sword the most. It did not dare to be careless in the slightest when it saw the king's sword, which was nothing fancy but filled with indescribable destructive power. Its huge body swayed in the air, and a bolt of rainbow-colored lightning shot out from each of the horns on its head. The 2 bolts of lightning merged into one in the air and blasted towards the huge golden sword. Amidst the violent rumble, the huge golden sword paused in the air for a moment, surrounded by rainbow-colored lightning. Yiting snorted coldly. She quickly made a few complicated gestures with her hands in front of her chest, then pressed them down forcefully. Immediately, the huge sword shone with golden light, forcibly breaking through the rainbow-colored lightning and slashing towards the holy dragon with unstoppable force. Is this a domain weapon? King Easton's eyes widened from afar. Even he felt a lingering fear towards Yiting's strength. A domain weapon? This was the first time Long Houchen had heard of such a thing. However, looking at the situation in front of him and drawing inferences, he could vaguely guess that Yiting's domain might be a special form. She directly used her domain as a weapon, but it wasn't a domain technique. That huge sword should be her domain weapon. It was very likely that she had fused all the energy of the 2 divine swords during her recovery, resulting in this special evolution. From Yiting's attack just now, Long Houchen could sense that in terms of spiritual power, she was not much inferior to King Easton. Like King Easton, they were probably rank 9 level 4 powerhouses, while the Holy Dragon was probably rank 9 level 5. The reason why Long Houchen guessed that King Easton was at rank 5 was because he saw with his own eyes that his entire body suddenly turned rainbow-colored. Long Houchen quickly dodged the huge golden sword with a twist of his body. At the same time, he struck the back of the sword with his tail, causing it to fly to the side. Yiting's body trembled slightly. The huge golden sword in the air also paused for a moment. She had just obtained a body. Although her cultivation had evolved to the level of an elven king, she was still not proficient in controlling it. Long Houchen pointed his right hand at Yiting. Immediately, the rainbow-colored light surged towards Yiting like rivers flowing into the sea. He and Yiting were connected by a blood contract, and their strength came from the same source. When his domain enveloped Yiting, Yiting's aura immediately surged. She drew a circle in the air with both hands, and the huge golden sword shone brightly. It transformed into a sword screen in the air, forcefully suppressing the holy dragon that was about to charge at her. The holy dragon was depressed. Although Yiting's domain weapon was very powerful, it was still confident that it could win the battle in a short amount of time under normal circumstances. However, Long Houchen's domain was too strong against its domain. After the light attribute, which was the most important attribute, was completely weakened, the holy dragon's strength was reduced by at least a third. Although its body was strong, it did not dare to go head-on against Yiting's domain weapon. For a moment it was at a disadvantage. What worried the holy dragon even more was that as Yiting became more proficient in controlling the golden sword, and with the amplification of Long Houchen's domain, Yiting's attacks became fiercer and fiercer. The holy dragon was forced to retreat again and again, and had no choice but to continuously use the domain to fight against her. Long Houchen withdrew his right hand that had been pointing towards the sky. He had actually thought of a way to deal with the holy dragon, but he did not expect Yiting to have such an ability. In that case, there was no hurry to reveal his trump card. Only heaven knew if there were more difficult tests after the eternal and creation throne of God. The light god's domain fully supported Yiting's domain, and the horn on the holy unicorn's head constantly emitted circles of rainbow-colored halos, strengthening Long Houchen's spiritual power. The world of Easton was a world full of life, and light was naturally indispensable. Moreover, the light element here was very pure. The holy dragon had come here many times because it liked the light element here, but at this moment, the light element only acknowledged one master, and that was the light god's domain. The suppression of the domain prevented the holy dragon from fully unleashing its strength, and under the combined efforts of Long Houchen and Yiting, there was nothing they could do. As it fought against the golden sword, the holy dragon's gaze began to focus, and it began to chant in a low voice. Its voice was very unique, and it was clearly the language of the dragon race. As it continued to chant, the six-colored light emitted from its body became brighter and brighter. Compared to the holy unicorn, the holy dragon also had 6 major attributes: water, fire, earth, wind, thunder, and ice. With the addition of light, it had all 7 attributes. At this moment, it could not use the power of the light element, but it could still use the other 6 attributes. As the holy dragon continued to chant, the sky seemed to boil, and a large number of 6-colored halos turned into halos that floated in the air. Draconic magic. Long Houchen's expression became solemn. The holy dragon's draconic magic was definitely the most powerful attack of the dragon race. On the holy demon continent, even ordinary dragons were rare, let alone a holy dragon. Even if it lacked one attribute, the power of this attack would still be terrifying. Long Houchen could not help but raise his right hand again. "Big brother, let me do it. I can do it." Yiting's determined voice sounded in Long Houchen's ears. Immediately afterwards, her body suddenly turned into a stream of light, flying towards her golden sword. Yiting's domain was called the ruler's sword, and was a pure domain weapon. Domain weapons were existences that were above ordinary divine weapons, and the most powerful domain weapons could even surpass the might of a supreme divine weapon. What was she doing? Yiting quickly gave him the answer. With a flash of light, her body quietly disappeared from the ruler's sword. A golden light that was 100 times stronger than before suddenly burst forth, and a terrifying intense soared into the sky as if it wanted to pierce through the heavens. The holy dragon's draconic magic was also completed at this moment. In the sky, the phantoms of 6 dragons that were over 1,000 meters long appeared, and each dragon spat out a powerful breath towards Long Houchen. Each dragon's breath was comparable to a super forbidden spell. The 6 dragon phantoms were activated at the same time, and the sky suddenly changed color, and the sun and moon dimmed. However, in the midst of this terrifying pressure, Yiting's ruler's sword suddenly expanded, becoming 1,000 meters long in the blink of an eye. Sword intent, sword soul, and sword heart instantly fused into one. This was an indescribably terrifying power, and its sharpness was something that Long Haochen had never seen before. If the purple-gold Haoyue sword that Haoyue had transformed into was the most powerful sword of destruction, then at this moment, Yiting's ruler's sword was the most powerful sword of righteousness. Long Haochen had used the aria of the Goddess of Light and the blue rain of Hibiscus of Light as his weapons for a very long time. It could be said that his understanding of the sword had always been manifested through these two swords. After the two swords fused with Yiting, the memories that came with the swords, as well as the understanding that Yiting had gained after fusing with Long Haochen, in addition to the effects of Long Haochen's God of Light's bloodline, caused Yiting's understanding of the sword to reach a whole new level, and even surpassed Long Haochen's. This was because she had once been a sword spirit. Thousands of golden rays flashed in the sky, and it was as if countless golden light pillars had appeared in an instant. The 6 terrifying breaths were stirred up by the golden light and instantly became chaotic. Sword Star Shower? This was the Sword Star Shower. Long Haochen's eyes widened. That's right. Wasn't the ruler's Sword Star Shower the knight's Sword Star Shower? However, this was also the most powerful version of the Sword Star Shower that Long Haochen had ever seen. In front of the ruler's sword, the huge bodies of the 6 dragons seemed to have become lambs waiting to be slaughtered. The golden light shone, and the ruler's sword that Yiting had transformed into spun in the air. In an instant, a thin golden line appeared on each of the dragons' necks, and in the next moment, they completely collapsed. The holy WRM was dumbfounded. Although his dragon language magic was not guided by the light WRM as the main body, it was still one of his strongest spells. Yet, it was destroyed by an opponent that was weaker than him just like that. The power of a domain weapon had actually reached such a level. Moreover, why was she able to use the domain weapon even though her cultivation base was not at the 5th rank of the 9th level? From the holy WRM's point of view, the fusion of Yiting and the ruler's sword was clearly the characteristic of the domain weapon. However, in reality, Yiting naturally could not use the domain weapon. She had transformed herself into the ruler's sword's sword spirit, and from there, urged the ruler's sword to burst forth with the strongest power. It could be said that the current her had magnified her original ability by 100 or even 1,000 times. After the ruler's sword broke through the holy WRM's magic, it immediately turned around and slashed at the holy WRM's head without hesitation. This time, the holy WRM was a little flustered, and there was no need to mention how sullen it was. Long Haochen's domain had a huge impact on it, and Yiting's domain weapon was so overbearing. In the distance, Long Haochen had not even directly intervened, but the holy WRM was already on the verge of collapsing. With a furious roar, the holy WRM's figure flashed and appeared thousands of meters away. I'm done. I haven't lost. It's just that your domains are too effective against me. Moreover, what's the point of fighting 2 against 1? The golden light receded, and Yiting returned to Long Haochen's side in a flash. She glanced at the holy WRM disdainfully and said, I've only used half of my power, and you're already unable to hold on. You didn't say that you couldn't fight 2 against 1, so a loss is a loss. As a holy WRM, do you not even have this bit of magnanimity? If these words had come from Long Haochen, the holy WRM would definitely be very disgruntled, but since it came from Yiting, he could not refute it. The Eastern King fanned the flames from the side and said, Never would I have thought that the mighty holy WRM would actually lose to an elf. Let's see if you still have the face to come to our Easton in the future. The holy WRM snapped, Shorty, don't be so shameless. Is this elf Easton's? Don't flatter yourself. Fine, a loss is a loss. You've passed the second test. You're quite capable to be able to suppress me in terms of domains. Long Houchen nodded at the holy WRM and said, "Thank you for your help." The test of the throne of God of eternity and creation was much more difficult than he had imagined. It was also different from what Yang Haoyu had told him before. According to Yang Haoyu's description, the test should not have been this difficult. Although it seemed like Long Houchen had easily passed the test, the truth was that if he hadn't had the light god domain and hadn't been able to complete his evolution, coupled with his intellect and experience, as well as the fact that Yiting had been resurrected in time, both the first and second stages would have been insurmountable. It could be said that his passing these two tests was a combination of wisdom, strength, and luck. Of course, it could also be said that it was the will of the heavens. The holy WRM glanced at Long Houchen and said, "Although you've passed my test, it does not mean that you can pass the final test. Your domain will no longer have any advantage in the final test. I suggest that you quickly recover your strength, because the final test is about to begin." Hearing this, Long Houchen was both happy and worried, but he did not hesitate to speed up the rhythm of the heart of eternity. At the same time, he retracted his domain and spread the 6 wings on his back to their maximum. With the help of the Holy Unicorn, he and Yiting fully recovered their spiritual power. He was naturally worried about the test that even the Holy WRM found extremely difficult, but he was naturally happy because the test had finally reached its final moment. If he could pass this final test, it would mean that he would receive the recognition of the eternal and creation throne of God. As Long Houchen and the Holy WRM retracted their respective domains, the sky also became clear again, but there was a trace of strangeness in this clarity. Long Houchen felt as if he was being stared at by something. The voice that had appeared several times before did not give any more hints, and the pressure in the air was getting stronger and stronger. He did not know what the final test was, but after the battle with the Holy WRM, Long Houchen vaguely understood that the most difficult test of the eternal and creation throne of God was not the later test of strength, but the first test, which was a test of humanity and wisdom, especially in the case of being misled. It was very important to find the right path. Perhaps many Changqi who had been tested in the past had failed in this aspect. Yang Haoyu had once told him that there were at least 2 tests that he had failed inexplicably, and he didn't even know why he had failed the test. After trying several times, Yang Haoyu's final conclusion was that true knowledge was revealed from the subtleties, and he couldn't ignore any details during the test. Although the experience he had provided to Long Houchen was a little exaggerated, it had still reminded him, allowing Long Houchen to pass 2 tests in a row. The final test seemed to be a test of strength, but he did not know what kind of cultivation his opponent would have this time. Just as Long Houchen was thinking, a white pillar of light fell straight down from the sky. The pillar of light was not very large, with a diameter of about 10 meters. It appeared 50 meters in front of Long Houchen, and was pure white without any attribute. After about 3 seconds, the pillar of light slowly dissipated, and a figure appeared in the air. King Easton's exclamation came from not far away. The Eternal Angel. It was a woman with a slender figure. From her overall appearance, she had many similarities with Yiting. For example, she was also very beautiful. It was a kind of noble and aloof beauty, but her arrogance seemed to be innate, and it gave people a feeling that it couldn't be more normal. On her back, she also had the same 12 wings as Yiting, but the difference was that Yiting's wings were transparent, while her wings were feathered. They were somewhat similar to the spiritual wings of humans, but they looked more real. The 12 wings were pure white and flawless. Under the sunlight, they glowed faintly. The holiness made people feel like they could not be profane. She was also wearing a long white dress. The dress was very simple, but it seemed to fit her perfectly. She had golden hair and golden eyes, but there was no aura of light emanating from her. In her right hand there was a slender white magic staff. There were no gems embedded on the magic staff, but Long Houchen's gaze was immediately attracted by it. What he saw was not a magic staff, but the sun, the moon, and the stars. The magnificence was far superior to Yang Haoyu's astral god territory. His heart sank. Long Houchen knew very well that this powerful being called the Eternal Angel was much more terrifying than he had imagined. The Eternal Angel glanced at Long Houchen calmly. Her voice was as cold and arrogant as her appearance. "Defeat me, and you will pass the test." As she spoke, she raised the magic staff in her hand high and murmured, "Eternal Lord, grant me your supreme power." The sky turned white in an instant, and an endless oppressive force pressed down on Long Houchen. Although he was very close to the Eternal Angel, Long Houchen felt as though there was an endless gulf between them when he looked at her. Long Houchen subconsciously released his light god domain. However, as soon as the seven-colored golden light appeared, it was immediately forced back by the white light. Long Houchen was shocked to discover that his light god domain, which had always been successful, was actually gradually dissipating under the illumination of the white light. Although it wasn't dissipating very quickly, it was indeed collapsing. It felt as if it had been stripped away by luminous moon's chaotic element. What exactly was the attribute of her domain? Or did it have no attribute? Long Houchen moved his mind and forcibly maintained his light god domain outside his body, feeling the intensity of the white light. Don't waste your energy. This is the Eternal Lord's eternal domain. You are already in the eternal domain, so how can you fight against the eternal light? The eternal light is the power of chaos, and it can suppress and assimilate any attribute. The Eternal Angel drew an outline with the magic staff in her hand, and a shadow gradually appeared in front of her. At this moment, Yiting also made her move. The huge golden sword appeared in the sky again and slashed at the Eternal Angel. She did not care who her opponent was. As long as it stood in front of Long Houchen, she would help her brother destroy it. As soon as the ruler's sword appeared, the white light in the sky immediately turned into streaks of white light and entangled it. In an instant, the ruler's sword seemed to have fallen into a swamp. Although it continuously slashed at the streaks of white light, its power was being rapidly depleted with every passing second. This caused Yiting's expression to change drastically. She did not even transform into a sword spirit to enter the battle. Instead, she quickly withdrew the ruler's sword. The scene of Long Houchen dealing with King Easton and the Holy Dragon appeared once again. However, this time the roles were different. Long Houchen was the one being restrained by the domain. If he continued to fight with the domain, he would soon run out of spiritual power. Moreover, even now, he could not tell what level the Eternal Angel's cultivation had reached. "Brother, use me as your sword," Yiting said firmly. She then leapt into the air, and with a flash of golden light, a heavy sword appeared in front of Long Houchen. He was no match for the other party in a domain battle, so he could only rely on his own strength to break through the blockade. However, Long Houchen did not have a weapon, so Yiting could only turn herself into his weapon. The huge golden sword was 7 feet long and a foot wide. There were 18 ridges on the blade, making it look extremely sharp. The sword crocodile was covered with overlapping wings, and the hilt was long and slender. From the tip of the sword to the hilt, there was a transparent line that looked like a long gemstone. An extremely sharp aura flickered and pulsed within the line. Chapter 265. The ruler's sword shone with an 8-colored light. Yes, it was one more color than the 7-colored god weapon. Its powerful aura even surpassed that of the purple gold Haoyue sword. Moreover, the aura it emitted was pure light ruler's qi, which was more compatible with Long Houchen's light god domain. Long Houchen raised his right hand and grasped the giant sword. His body trembled slightly. The feeling of being connected by blood caused his aura to instantly become one with the ruler's sword. The 8-colored golden light burst forth and turned into a light screen that isolated Long Houchen. The white light that had been weakening Long Houchen could no longer affect him. At the same time, The holy unicorn behind Long Houchen also turned into a 7-colored stream of light and landed on Long Houchen's body. It turned into a set of holy armor and strengthened him. Oh, it can even resist the eternal light? The eternal angel looked at him in surprise. Long Houchen said in a deep voice, "Your primal chaos attribute can indeed communicate with any other attribute. However, if any attribute reaches an extreme level, your primal chaos attribute won't be able to devour it. My light is the purest light. Perhaps my domain isn't a match for yours, but you won't be able to weaken me with your domain either." As he spoke, the 6 wings on Long Houchen's back flapped, and his body turned into a golden light. He appeared in front of the eternal angel like a bolt of lightning. The ruler's sword in his hand shone brightly, and thousands of golden lights shone in all directions. It was his self-created demon-slaying flash. The eternal angel's body became illusory. In the next instant she was already 1,000 meters away. "Since my domain cannot defeat you, then I'll rely on my own strength." The eternal angel snorted coldly and pointed with her staff. Suddenly, a huge white light expanded in front of her. The white light shot up, and in the blink of an eye, it had already turned into a giant that was 1,000 meters tall. This giant was completely white, and it was completely formed from the power of chaos. It wore white armor and had no weapons. Long Houchen groaned, his body explosively retreating in the air. This time, his complexion changed. This 1,000-meter-tall giant actually gave him the same feeling as when he faced the demon god Emperor. Although he was no longer as weak as he was at that time, and didn't feel like he couldn't contend against it, that terrifying pressure was still too great. This eternal angel actually had the same strength as the demon god Emperor? Zhao Fu flicked his king's sword upwards and flashed with a golden light as a thick bolt of golden lightning containing an incredibly sharp sword intent slashed towards the massive figure of light. The figure of light roared furiously, and an explosive sound rang out from his body. A layer of white light gushed out from his body, and the sword intent that Long Houchen had unleashed with his king's sword was actually dispersed just like that. It had to be known that this sword attack of his contained the might of the light of judgment. With the suppression of the domain and the strength of the figure of light, Long Houchen suddenly felt like he was at the end of his rope. The pressure that the figure of light gave him was simply too strong, so strong that even his thoughts were being suppressed. This was an opponent that he could not fight against at all. However, if that was the case, what was the point of the assessment of the throne of God of eternity and creation? Just as Long Houchen was thinking about this, the huge figure of light had already thrown a punch towards him. Long Houchen's eyes narrowed. His willpower was extremely firm. Even when he faced the situation of certain death against the demon emperor, he did not have any intention of admitting defeat. No matter how strong his opponent was, he would definitely not retreat. Holding the king's sword with both hands, Long Houchen's eyes flashed with a divine light. A layer of 7-colored flames suddenly rose up. He was burning his own domain. Even if he had to use up his origin energy, he would not admit defeat. Clang! In midair, the king's sword collided with the huge fist, and 8-colored light shone brightly. The rainbow flames on Long Houchen's body also emitted a dazzling ring of light, and fiercely collided with the fist. However, all of this only felt like an itch to the figure of white light. In the next instant, Long Houchen's body was sent flying like a cannonball. King Easton stared at this scene, dumbfounded. After the eternal angel appeared, the seal that came from the Lord of Nature was also removed. However, there was only disbelief in his eyes when he saw what was happening before his eyes. "Old dragon, how is this possible? Even if the eternal angel is more powerful than you and I, she shouldn't be this powerful." The holy dragon transmitted, "What do you know? This is a test that the eternal Lord has for that human. The eternal angel has only temporarily obtained the authority to control the eternal domain. If this were the outside world, even 10 of her wouldn't be able to achieve this level of cultivation. King Easton was confused. If that's the case, then what's the point of the test? Who can beat her? The Holy Dragon said in disdain. What else is there in your brain other than muscles? What do you know? Watch for yourself. King Easton was furious. Damn it, if you say that I know anything again, I'll smash your ass with a hammer. The Holy Dragon stared at the battlefield without blinking. In response to King Easton's anger, one of its 5 dragon claws extended. However, it was a middle finger in the air. Long Houchen could only feel the light elements in his body vibrating violently. He only managed to stabilize himself after flying thousands of meters backward. Although the pain from his body was intense, he was surprised that he did not suffer any serious injuries. Instead, the sharpness of the king's sword had left a deep mark on the giant figure of Light's fist. A thought immediately popped up in Long Houchen's mind. The figure of Light's attack did not seem to be as powerful as the pressure it displayed. The figure of Light's attack did not stop. It raised its right hand in the air, and its entire arm turned into a 1,000-meter-long sword that slashed down from the sky. Before the sword even landed, a deep ravine had already appeared on the ground thousands of meters below. King Easton's heart ached. However, he did not dare to rush forward to stop it. The strength displayed by the figure of Light was simply too terrifying. Even if he and the Holy Dragon worked together, they might not be its match. In the air, all the elemental attributes seemed to have been mobilized in an instant. Long Houchen's body was completely locked down, and he could not dodge at all. Even if the space around him was locked down, he could not escape even if he had the power to travel through space. This feeling was similar to when he was locked down by the 3 demon gods in the Star Demon Tower. His blood surged and Long Houchen's eyes lit up. The blood in his body was already boiling. The battle in the Star Demon Tower was the greatest failure of his life. Because of that, his beloved Kai Er had endured so much pain to bring him back to life. The same feeling appeared again. The power in Long Houchen's entire body immediately increased explosively. He gripped the king's sword tightly with both hands, and the intense rainbow-colored halo became 8-colored under the influence of the divine sword. An 8-colored beam of light that was only a meter in diameter but as bright as the sun shot into the sky. A compressed version, the divine light wall. With the king's sword, which was in existence between a divine weapon and a supreme divine weapon, Long Houchen's domain usage and amplification had undergone a geometric change. Boom, white light danced in the sky, and the powerful cutting power of the divine light waltz forcibly cut off a third of the 1,000-meter-long light sword. When it once again slashed in front of Long Houchen, its momentum was not as great as before. The rainbow-colored light of the sun-moon divine snail shield shone, and turned into a huge shield above his head. However, the power of the light sword was indeed terrifying, and it still smashed Long Houchen hard into the gully on the ground. He spat out a mouthful of blood in midair. The figure of light took a step forward, and directly stepped on the spot where Long Houchen had been smashed into. It looked like it was not going to give him a chance to live at all. However, it was also at this moment that the light in the sky suddenly changed. The originally bright sunlight suddenly dimmed, and the sun began to set in the west. It seemed like night was about to arrive early. The eternal angel could not help but be stunned by this change. However, the foot of the light sword still stomped down fiercely, and the ground rumbled so loudly that King Easton could not help but close his eyes. With such a terrifying stomp, even if Long Houchen did not die, he would not have many breaths left. The divine stone of the sun and moon? The eternal angel looked at the sky in confusion. The divine stone of the sun and moon was a treasure that contained the purest essence of the sun and moon in nature. With enough power, it could change day and night and change day and night in advance. It had always been one of Easton's most important treasures. However, the eternal angel had previously heard that the divine stone of the sun and moon had been stolen, but he did not expect it to appear now. If it was not used by King Easton or the Holy Dragon, then it must be Long Houchen. It was also at this moment that the domineering, almost invincible giant of light suddenly trembled. Its movement was not large, but everyone could still see it clearly due to its size. Immediately after, a strange light began to spread from the foot of the giant of light, and its body seemed to have completely solidified. Red, orange, yellow, green, indigo, blue, purple, black, white. The 9-colored light flickered, and rose upwards with a special gentleness. As it rose, the alternation of the sun and moon in the sky seemed to freeze. Sunlight and moonlight circled and merged in the sky. The terrifying might of heaven and earth caused the eternal angel, the holy dragon, and King Easton to shudder. No matter how powerful they were still insignificant before the might of heaven and earth. Even gods could not resist the might of heaven, because gods were born from heaven and earth. The 9-colored light soon spread to every corner of the giant of light's body. At this moment, the divine light of the sun and moon in the sky seemed to have completed their final fusion. A huge golden and white pillar of light descended from the sky. The perfect fusion of sunlight and moonlight focused on the 1,000-meter-tall giant of light. Under the eternal angel's dazed gaze, the huge blade of light slowly melted before the might of heaven and earth. The divine light of the sun and moon shot straight into the ground, and a figure slowly rose from the divine light. The holy armor was not stained by the slightest bit of soil. In his right hand was the huge king's sword, while his left hand was raised high above his head. A shield shining with a 9-colored halo was madly absorbing the light of the sun and moon, causing his body to shine with both gold and white. 9-colored? A supreme artifact? The holy dragon and King Easton said almost at the same time. They looked at each other and could clearly see the fear and shock in each other's hearts. The holy dragon felt it the most. If Long Houchen had used this supreme artifact during their battle, then he would probably already be. The eternal angel was even more shocked. She never expected Long Houchen to be able to destroy the giant of light with 1,000,000 spiritual energy points. That was close to the strength of a demigod. Even if it was only condensed from spiritual energy, its overall strength would definitely exceed that of a rank 6 powerhouse. Yes, Long Houchen had activated the ultimate power of the Sun-Moon Divine Snail's shield. The defense of the sun and moon depends on the heart. The guidance of light, the protection of God. Dawn at dawn, sunset at dusk, the sun and moon alternate, the divine snail as the shield. These were the words left behind by the Sun-Moon Divine Snail. Through Long Houchen's constant comprehension, he gradually understood that the Sun-Moon Divine Snail's shield could only unleash its greatest power at dawn or dusk, when the sun and moon alternated. The strength needed to activate this power was at least rank 3. In other words, when Long Houchen advanced to rank 3, he could be considered to have truly grasped the power of this supreme artifact. Golden white light flashed between heaven and earth. The chaotic energy on the eternal angel's body seemed to be greatly affected. As her body trembled, the terrifying aura that resembled that of a demon emperor rapidly weakened. The entire world of Easton seemed to become illusory under the illumination of the divine light of the sun and moon. "Friend, retract your power, or our eternal realm will be destroyed," King Easton said to Long Houchen urgently. The golden white light slowly faded. The Sun-Moon Divine Snail's shield did not attack again. The sky gradually darkened from the sun to the moon. Long Houchen, who was flashing with colorful light in the sky, appeared even more noble. The 9 colors of the Sun-Moon Divine Snail's shield had turned back to 7 colors, and its light had dimmed significantly. Long Houchen had already sensed its use when he obtained the Sun-Moon Divine Stone. More accurately, the Sun-Moon Divine Snail's shield had given him a hint. Now, the attack launched with the Sun-Moon Divine Stone and the Sun-Moon Divine Snail's shield had turned the tide. However, he also sensed that the Sun-Moon Divine Snail's shield would not be able to unleash its brilliance again for at least 3 days, due to the abnormal rotation of the sun and moon. However, a supreme artifact was a supreme artifact. Its light had dimmed, but Long Houchen had recovered to his peak condition under the illumination of the sun and moon. Looking at the eternal angel from afar, Long Houchen wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and said, "I wonder if I've passed your test?" The eternal angel's aura at the peak of the 9th tier had completely weakened. It felt like the aura she was emitting now was not much different from that of a holy dragon. Facing Long Houchen, who was holding the sword of the king and was clearly at his peak condition, she knew that she had no chance of winning. Moreover, the brilliance of the Sun-Moon Divine Snail's shield had given her a huge shock. "You've passed the test." The eternal angel nodded at Long Houchen. At that moment, the entire world of Easton suddenly turned 9-colored. The 9-colored divine light slowly circled around Long Houchen. A cold voice echoed in the air. "Wisdom, tenacity, composure, power. You've passed the test of the 3 great artifact spirits. From now on, you are the master of the eternal and creator throne of God. The eternal angel will explain the throne to you in detail." Happiness had come so suddenly, yet so naturally. Long Houchen was a little dazed, and his eyes were a little moist. It had been more than a decade. It had been more than a decade since he had first seen the power of the throne of God. Over these years, he had trained hard and gone through many hardships. Today, he would finally have his own throne of God. It was the ancestral throne of God, the eternal and creator throne that had never been used by anyone before. At that moment, his emotions could not be described with just the word excited. It was an indescribable feeling of carefreeness. It was an acknowledgement of the sublimation of his soul. He suddenly recalled what the Calamity Necromancer Electrolux had said in the Tower of Eternity before he left. "I hold the sun, the moon, and the stars in my hand. There is no one like me in this world." The darkness would eventually shatter under the illumination of the eternal light. "Demon Emperor, I finally have the right to challenge you." In the air, the eternal angel, the holy dragon, and the king of Easton slowly bowed to Long Houchen, who was shining with 9-colored light. The 3 experts said respectfully, "The guardians of the realm of eternity greet you, Master." Long Houchen hurriedly said, "There's no need to be so polite. Please rise." The 3 experts straightened up. The eternal angel said, "Master, are you curious about the 3 tests?" Long Houchen nodded slightly. He had already guessed it, but he needed to confirm it. The eternal angel said, "This is the realm of eternity. I, the eternal angel, guard the sky. The holy dragon guards the sea and all magical beasts. King of Easton guards the earth. Together, we represent a world of eternity and creation. This is called the realm of eternity, and the realm of eternity itself is the inner domain of the throne of God of eternity and creation. Therefore, if you want to obtain the recognition of the throne, you must naturally take the test here. The throne of God of eternity and creation is the throne of the God of creation. It is a true supreme divine artifact, much more powerful than the one in your hand. That shield of yours can only release the power of a supreme divine artifact under special circumstances. It barely touches the edge of a supreme divine artifact. The throne of God of eternity and creation was lost in the starry sky when the God of creation split himself into 100 gods to control all the planes. Guided by fate, it came to your planet, which is the holy demon continent that you are familiar with. It has been waiting for the birth of a new master. The throne of God of eternity and creation was actually the throne of the God of creation? Long Houchen's eyes narrowed slightly as he listened attentively. The throne will bestow upon you the greatest power. With the existence of the throne, it is equivalent to you being granted the position of God by the God of creation. You will never have to worry about the bottleneck of divinity. Long Houchen's heart skipped a beat. Is the bottleneck of divinity you speak of 1,000,000 spiritual energy points? The eternal angel nodded. Yes. The final test for you just now was to use the power of the realm of eternity to simulate 1,000,000 spiritual energy points. According to the instructions of the Eternal Lord, You only needed to last 15 minutes under my attack to pass the test. However, I did not expect you to use a supreme divine artifact to defeat my simulated power. Although that supreme divine artifact of yours is far from being comparable to the throne of God of eternity and creation, it is still within the realm of the throne. Long Houchen asked curiously, "Then who is the Eternal Lord?" The Eternal Angel said with a look of reverence, "The Eternal Lord is a trace of the will that the God of creation left on the throne. He is also the true master of the realm of eternity. However, he will not appear easily. He told me to tell you that when you complete the necessary task, the throne of God of eternity and creation will complete its mission in this world. It will follow the arrangements of fate and head to another plane." Hearing this, Long Houchen completely understood. The throne of God of eternity and creation did not recognize him as its master forever. It could only be regarded as lending it to him, or rather, borrowing it from the holy demon continent. Yes, it was the throne of the God of creation. How could it be used by him forever? At this moment, the 9-colored halo in the sky suddenly became denser. A calm and emotionless voice sounded. Long Houchen, follow the guidance of fate and pursue the true reason why the demons descended 6,000 years ago. Seek the source of the destruction of the world. The eternal and creation throne of God came because of the destruction of the plane, and will also return with the restoration of the plane. You are the one chosen by fate. The test is complete. Rings of intense 9-colored halo revolved around Long Houchen's body rhythmically. In the next moment, he only felt that his entire body was immersed in a special power. It was the endless power of chaos, and this power seemed to be changing because of his body. The familiar light attribute began to appear, and it sprouted at an astonishing speed. His soul and body were sublimated in this process of growth and creation. Dragon resisting pass. Long Xingwu and the members of the Light of Dawn monster hunters were anxiously waiting. It had been a month since the beginning of the confrontation with the aura of the eternal and creation throne of God. However, there was still no news from Long Houchen. As early as 20 days ago, Zhang Fangfang and Han Yu had completed their respective tests and obtained their own throne of God. Now, the Knights Templars also had an unprecedented 5 Knight of the Seal. However, Long Xingwu and the members of the Light of Dawn monster hunters were not happy at all, because the person who was most likely to become the Knight of the Seal in their hearts had not returned. His test was still ongoing. It's already been a month. Why hasn't Boss come out yet? Could something have happened? Lin Xian said anxiously. Cherninger glared at him fiercely and said, "Shut your crow's mouth." Kai stood beside Long Xingwu and waited silently. Although she seemed calm, she was actually more anxious than the others. Long Xingwu comforted everyone. There is a month-long test to obtain the recognition of the throne of God. This is something that has never happened before. Because of this, Houchen's chances should be very high. Don't worry, even if Houchen cannot obtain the recognition of the throne of God, he will not be harmed. Although this was said, he would not be harmed. This only represented the other 5 throne of God. As the primogenitor's throne of God, no one knew to what extent it was truly mysterious. Just as Long Xingwu was comforting everyone, suddenly, everyone felt dizzy. What's going on? Everyone was a powerhouse of the present age. After feeling that something was wrong, they immediately reacted. Immediately after, they discovered that the earth seemed to be trembling. The entire dragon-resisting mountain pass was slightly shaking from the tremors. Could it be the earth dragon turning over? Long Xingwu was aghast. Although the earth dragon turning over was not common on the continent, it was not unheard of. Moreover, once the earth dragon turning over occurred, the losses would be huge. The dragon-resisting mountain pass was one of the 6 impregnable passes of the human race. If a strong earth dragon turning over occurred, the new federation would suffer an incomparable blow. However, the tremors did not intensify. Although the shaking of the dragon-resisting mountain pass alarmed everyone, it was only maintained within a certain range, and did not increase in intensity. Suddenly, a terrifying spiritual fluctuation seeped out from the ground without warning. Immediately after, not far from everyone, the sculpture representing the eternal and creative throne of God suddenly lit up. The originally pitch-black sculpture suddenly turned into an incomparably gorgeous nine-colored light. Immediately after, a beam of light shot out from the sculpture and rose into the sky. Strangely enough, this beam of light did not destroy any buildings. However, in the blink of an eye, it had already rushed out of the dragon-resisting mountain and went straight into the sky. Even hundreds of miles away, this strange scene could be seen. The gorgeous nine-colored light shot straight up, broke through the clouds, and flew even higher into the sky. It's the eternal and creative throne of God. Could it be Houchen, he? Seeing the sculpture of the eternal and creative throne of God light up, Long Xingwu felt as if his heart was being squeezed. This ancestral throne of God had never shown such a change before. What did this mean? A majestic aura spread out from the entire dragon-resisting mountain pass. The demons stationed in the distance were suddenly greatly shocked. They also saw the nine-colored light. For them, that majestic aura had turned into a heavy pressure. In the sky, the nine-colored light gradually expanded, and a huge throne about 100 feet high slowly emerged from the nine-colored light. Its size was really too big. It was impossible for the demons to not see it. The pressure was so terrifying that the low-level demons were terrified. Because of the special nature of the dragon-resisting mountain pass, the demons stationed here did not have weak existences like the dual-bladed demons. However, because the Holy War had ended several years ago, the strength of the demons stationed here was not small compared to 4 years ago. Some of the third-grade demons had completely collapsed to the ground, while trembling. If the pressure continued to increase, it might take their lives. Unlike the panic of the demons, the experts of the dragon-resisting mountain pass were completely immersed in shock at this time. The sculptures of the sixth throne of God, almost every knight of the 5th grade and above had seen them. The Knights Templars had also always had the Knight of the Seal. However, compared to the huge nine-colored throne of God in front of them, the other throne of God that had once released countless brilliance on the battlefield seemed to be overshadowed. The nine-colored light had a special aura. The 9 colors were shining, but there was not the slightest hint of chaos. Vaguely, behind the throne of God, the 9 colors gradually formed a circle of shining light, and the throne itself gradually turned into the color of a white jade sculpture. The other throne of God seemed to be made of metal. Only this one had a jade-like texture. All the sculptures were still so lifelike, but compared to the black of the sculptures, the lustrous white now gave people a sense of supreme nobility. A light shadow was slowly projected in front of the huge throne of God. The light shadow was wearing a 7-colored divine armor, holding a golden sword that flickered with 8 colors. The armor covered his face, but his stalwart figure was at least 500 meters tall. Slowly, he sat on the incomparable throne of God, as if a real God had descended to the world. The moment he sat on the eternal and creator throne of God, the terrifying pressure reached its peak. On the side of the demons, all the 3rd grade and 4th grade demons instantly exploded in the face of this terrifying pressure, turning into flesh and blood. Yes, that huge shadow was Long Houchen. At this moment, Long Houchen didn't know where he was. He only felt an indescribable great power surrounding him. He used to have the sword of life and creation, and he even comprehended the godly domain technique of controlling the process of life during the evolution of his domain. However, when he sat on this throne of God, it seemed that all his past comprehensions became insignificant. A true will of creation lingered in his heart. The will of eternity also caused the heart of eternity in his chest to gradually calm down. The indescribable enlightenment lingered in his heart. His cultivation was also slowly rising because of this eternal and creation throne of God. The speed of the rise was not fast, but the realm of his mind was also rising. Compatibility, harmony. Long Houchen's will and spiritual power were merging with the eternal and creation throne of God in this wonderful enlightenment. Under the illumination of the nine-colored light of the transcendent artifact, the knight began to kneel on one knee and pay the highest respect to Long Houchen in the air. At this moment, another 3 rays of light shot out from the dragon-resisting mountain pass. The first one was a golden red light. The huge throne was 10 feet high, and the back of the throne was inlaid with countless gems. Vaguely, one could see a figure floating on the back of the throne. It was fierce, dignified, and could even be said to be a terrifying pressure spreading out from it. At the top of the backrest was a bright red semicircular gem that looked like a half-sun overlooking the earth. However, its light was a slightly dusky orange-red, and it emitted a terrifying pressure as if the end of the world had come. Long Xingwu proudly floated in the air. This doomsday and slaughter throne of God was the best background for him. As for the other 2 throne of God, one was dark green in color, and the other was light yellow in color. They were also 10 feet high. On the dark green throne of God, there were a total of 1,080 dark green gems inlaid, forming a strange human face pattern, as if it was roaring. And in the center of this human face pattern, there was a relief of a young girl. The young girl's face was full of grief, and her eyes seemed as if they would drip tears at any time. The sadness and the fear around her converged into a strange characteristic. Yes, this was the throne of God of fear and sorrow. Apart from the throne of God of eternity and creation, which was on a different level, this throne of God was ranked first among the 5 throne of God created by humans. At this moment there was also a person standing in front of it. His eyes were calm and steady, his long hair draped over his shoulders, and his handsome face was filled with excitement. He was looking in the direction of the throne of God of eternity and creation. Han Yu, Long Houchen's loyal follower and retainer knight in the Light of Dawn monster hunters. At the same time, he was also the owner of the throne of God of fear and sorrow, and had been appointed by the Knights Templars as the Knight of the Seal of Destruction and Forgiveness. The light yellow throne of God had magnificent yellow patterns that expanded outwards in circles, and at the center, there was a huge yellow gem that was 3 meters tall. This yellow gem looked like a vertical eye, and there seemed to be a halo fluctuating inside, flashing with the light of wisdom. In front of this yellow throne of God, Zhang Fangfang was also gazing at Long Houchen and the throne of God of eternity and creation with excitement. Now, he, like Han Yu, had also officially become the Knight of the Seal of the Knights Templars. He was the owner of the throne of God of wisdom and spirit, and was appointed as the Knight of the Seal of Enlightenment and Inheritance of the Knights Templars. At this point, the 6th throne of God of Knights Templars already had their owners, and the overall strength of the Knights Templars had also risen to an unprecedented peak. Long Xingwu's voice sounded, covering the entire dragon-resisting mountain pass. 20 days ago, the Knights Templars had successively awakened the Knight of the Seal of Destruction and Forgiveness, and the Knight of the Seal of Enlightenment and Inheritance. Today, I would like to announce the greatest joyous event in the 6,000 years since the establishment of the Knights Templars. Our ancestral throne of God finally has its owner, and he is our reorganized Temple Federation's first president, Long Houchen. He has already obtained the approval of the throne of God of eternity and creation. On behalf of the Knights Templars, I confer him the title of Knight of the Seal of Glory and Leadership. From this moment on, he will also be the head of the 6th Knight of the Seal of the Knights Templars, and the supreme leader of the Knights Templars. Under the cover of Long Xingwu's voice that was infused with spiritual power, the dragon-resisting mountain pass instantly became silent. About 3 seconds later, cheers like the eruption of a volcano resounded throughout the impregnable mountain pass. Knight of the Seal, Knight of the Seal, Knight of the Seal. They all cheered the same slogan, for the glory of the Knights Templars. Meanwhile, the demon army stationed in the distance quietly pulled out their camp and retreated. They had no choice but to retreat. The throne of God shining with 9 colored halos brought them too much pressure. If they continued, who knows what kind of losses they would suffer. Moreover, when the commander of the demons saw that he didn't recognize 3 of the 4 throne of God that appeared in the sky, he realized that the situation was not good. He quickly sent scouts to report to the rear of the demons. This was a major event that would alarm the demon emperor. Long Houchen could feel the cheers of the dragon resisting mountain pass, but at this time, he couldn't respond, because everything in his body was sublimating. Chapter 266. His spiritual power and realm were constantly increasing, and the power of the light god's domain was actually fusing with the power of the eternal domain. The throne of God of eternity and creation fully reflected its great power as a supreme artifact. The pressure of its aura was far from what the other throne of God could compare with. Ding! A melodious crisp sound spread thousands of miles. The throne of God of eternity and creation under Long Houchen suddenly split, turning into 13 pure white halos that rose into the sky. The moment they rose into the sky, the light of the sun in the sky was completely suppressed and dimmed, as if it no longer existed, and 13 brand new suns replaced its original position. Long Houchen looked up at the sky with a hint of fanaticism in his eyes. He raised both his hands at the same time and said, "Fall, my eternal stars." The 13 eternal stars that shone with a dazzling white light descended from the sky and rapidly fused with Long Houchen's body. His 500-meter-tall body also shrank after each eternal star fused with it. When the 13th eternal star completely integrated with his body, he had already returned to the size of a normal person and no longer felt illusory. Everything returned to normal. Long Houchen was still wearing the holy armor, and the eternal and creation throne of God in the sky had completely disappeared. Long Houchen crossed his chest with his right fist and knocked on his left chest. He performed a knight's salute to all the Knight of the Dragon Resisting Pass. The sonorous sound resounded in Yulong Pass. This was the response of all the Knights Templars Knight on the city wall. Not only these knights, but also the 3 Knight of the Seal in the sky. From this moment on, Long Houchen was not only the chairman of the new federation, but also the unprecedented glory and leader of the Knights Templars, the Knight of the Seal, the leader of the 6th Knight of the Seal. "Dad, I did it." Long Houchen looked at Long Xingwu, while Long Xingwu looked at him with a somewhat dull gaze. His eyes were full of complex colors, including gratification, excitement, and many other unclear emotions. Han Yu and Zhang Fangfang reacted in a completely different way. The two rushed to Long Houchen's side at the same time, picked him up, and threw him high into the sky. At the same time, they each put away their throne of God. However, Long Houchen did not cooperate with his 2 good brothers' celebration. His figure flashed and returned to their side, whispering something in a low voice. Han Yu and Zhang Fangfang's complexion changed at the same time. The 3 of them greeted Long Xingwu and quickly flew back to the dragon-resisting mountain pass. Long Xingwu also did not understand what had happened, and hurriedly followed them back. Although the 4 Knight of the Seal did not appear for a long time, but the shock they brought to the dragon-resisting pass still greatly raised the morale of the Knights Templars. "Kai Long Houchen impatiently called out as soon as he returned to his companions. Kai fiercely rushed into his embrace like a swallow, tightly hugging him, but could not say a word. The two had just had the most intimate relationship, but Long Houchen had disappeared for a month. For Kai-er's heart it was a torment. She had always kept herself strong, because she did not want her companions to panic. After all, when Long Houchen was not here, she was the vice-captain. But when her lover finally returned successfully, she could no longer restrain her suppressed emotions. Long Houchen hugged Kai tightly, and gently stroked her long hair. The others pretended not to see, and turned their heads away. Patting Kai-er's back, Long Houchen said in a deep voice, I'm sorry, everyone. I've been undergoing the assessment for too long, and I've made everyone worried. However, I'm afraid we have to take action immediately. Hao Yue can no longer suppress his breakthrough, and has begun to attack the bottleneck. We must go immediately or else it will be too late. Originally, everyone was immersed in the excitement and joy of Long Houchen's return, but after hearing his words, their faces suddenly became serious. They had followed Long Houchen and faced the undead creatures from Hao Yue's world several times, so they were very clear about the horror of those undead creatures. Especially, every time Hao Yue evolved, the strength of the enemy would become stronger. There was even one time when Hao Yue's power completely evolved, and after it was interrupted, its vitality was almost injured. Hao Yue's power could destroy the demon god pillar, and its evolution was crucial to the entire glimmer of Dawn monster hunters. "Boss, we're ready," Lin Xian said proudly. Judging from his expression, it was obvious that his cultivation had improved again. Although everyone's faces were solemn, their eyes were filled with excitement after hearing that Long Houchen was about to go into battle. Even Han Yu and Zhang Fangfang were no exception. Although the undead army was strong, the glimmer of Dawn monster hunters were no longer the same as before, especially since everyone had just changed into epic tier equipment. Which one of them wasn't rubbing their palms together, ready to go into battle and feel the power of their brand new equipment? Kair straightened her body from Long Houchen's arms. She blushed, but didn't say anything. Long Houchen turned to Long Xingwu and said, "Dad, my mount is a creature from another plane. It's about to complete its evolution, and it's likely to be its last evolution. I'll bring my partners to protect it and ensure that it completes its evolution smoothly." Long Xingwu didn't expect his son to leave immediately after completing the test of the eternal and creative throne of God. He couldn't help but ask worriedly, "Can your body take it?" Long Houchen said, "Don't worry, I'm in peak condition now. There won't be any problems. We'll be back soon. It shouldn't take long." Long Xingwu nodded and said, "Be careful." Long Houchen smiled confidently. His companions weren't the only ones who were confident about the upcoming battle. He was the same. With the shield of the Sun-Moon Divine Snail and the eternal and creative throne of God, he had the confidence to challenge even the Demon Emperor. Moreover, he was still in the process of fusing with the eternal and creative throne of God, and his cultivation was constantly rising. Based on the current speed of the fusion, his cultivation would most likely break through to Tier 4 once the fusion was complete. A purplish-gold light shone on Long Houchen's forehead, and 9 purplish-gold light patterns glowed with a unique and mysterious luster. Rays of light continuously flashed from Long Houchen's chest, and 9 halos of light fell on the bodies of his companions. This was the ability of the Instant Flash domain that they had bought from the Demon Hunt Squad's trade center. Under the effects of the flash field, a silver-white halo appeared beneath the feet of every Monster Hunter's member. Immediately after, the purplish-gold light patterns on Long Houchen's forehead shone brightly and instantly merged with the silver-white halo of the flash field. In the next moment, the flash field had completely turned purplish-gold. With Long Houchen as the center, the halos beneath everyone's feet shone brightly at the same time. Space was torn apart and everyone disappeared without a trace. Long Xingwu was also a Knight of the Seal. Of course, he knew how difficult it was for Long Houchen to do what he had just done. The flash field could only strengthen the connection between him and his companions, but the group teleportation depended entirely on his own strength. Even if he had the coordinates, it was too risky to bring 9 people with him to tear apart space and teleport between planes. Even if he had the coordinates, it was too risky. Even Long Haoyu, the Holy Knight of the Stars, would not dare to do such a thing. Naturally, Long Houchen was not afraid. The throne of God of eternity and creation had the magical ability to travel through space. Moreover, his current cultivation and mastery of the domain had reached a whole new level. After everyone entered the space turbulence, Long Houchen's body suddenly emitted a jade-white luster that enveloped everyone's body, turning into a white light shield. They did not suffer any impact. In just a few breaths' time, they had broken through space again and arrived at the plane where Long Houchen was. With a flash of white light, Long Houchen and his companions left space at the same time. Although they had been mentally prepared, they could not help but be shocked when they saw the situation in front of them. As far as the eye could see, there were undead creatures everywhere, not only on the ground but also in the air. It seemed that the entire space had been filled with undead creatures. This time, Long Houchen did not evolve in the cave. Instead, he quietly crawled on a small hill. An intense purple-gold light shone faintly from his body. Any undead creature that rushed within 100 meters of his body would immediately turn into a purple-gold flame and be burned to ashes. The sudden appearance of Long Houchen's group naturally attracted the attention of the undead creatures. Immediately, the undead creatures launched an attack on them. At least 1,000 flying devil hunters flapped their wings and soared in the sky and spat out crescent-shaped dark green light at them. At this time, although there were no monarch-level powerhouses among the undead creatures that surrounded Hao, they were all undead creatures above the 4th or 5th level. Moreover, they had just arrived and had not fully launched their attack on Hao. Long Houchen raised his left hand, and a layer of 7-colored golden light turned into a huge light shield that enveloped everyone, including Hao. The crescent-shaped green light bombarded the 7-colored light shield, but it did not even cause a ripple. The purple-gold light on Hao's body dimmed a little. Long Houchen could sense the fluctuation of his emotions. Due to the arrival of Long Houchen and the rest, he had to start breaking through the bottleneck wholeheartedly. Originally, Hao could still suppress his breakthrough, and there was no need to be so anxious. However, after devouring the sapling of the Tree of Destruction, his power instantly reached a critical point. Even with his power, he could no longer suppress this breakthrough. The message that Hao gave to Long Houchen was simple. This breakthrough would take a very long time. Hao did not say much, and that was because he had complete trust in Long Houchen. Although the flying devil hunters had many attacks, to the light shield formed by the Sun-Moon Divine Snail Shield, it was undoubtedly a dragonfly trying to shake a stone pillar. After passing the assessment of the Throne of God of Eternity and Creation, Long Houchen had been in the process of merging with the throne. After that, he immediately came here. Therefore, he was still holding the 8-colored golden sword in his right hand. At this moment, he smiled at his companions. "Let me introduce a friend to everyone." As he spoke, he tossed the king's sword into the air. With a flash of golden light, 12 wings spread out, and Yiting appeared in front of everyone. Looking at this unparalleled beauty that they had never seen before, everyone could not help but be stunned. Yiting had inherited the body of Queen Yu Yi. In addition to her own characteristics, be it in terms of appearance or temperament, she was not inferior to Kai at all. Seeing her, Kai was also slightly stunned. She looked at Long Houchen in confusion, but she did not suspect anything. In terms of feelings, she had absolute trust in Long Houchen. Their hearts could no longer accommodate anyone else. Long Houchen held Kai-er's hand and said to Yiting, "Greet your sister-in-law." Yiting smiled sweetly and bowed to Kai. She said, "Sister-in-law, nice to meet you. I'm Long Yiting." Everyone's expression became strange. Lin Xian could not help but whisper to Sima Xian, "Boss is so domineering." He brought a girl back to show her to the deputy leader. Sima Xian nodded in agreement. He said, I can't compare. Chen Inger giggled. She said, "You two keep talking nonsense. Be careful that Kai will teach you a lesson. Is boss that kind of person?" Long Yiting, why does it sound so familiar? Kai also looked at the beautiful woman in front of her in surprise. She said, "You are." The undead army was pressing on outside. Long Houchen naturally would not let her guess. He smiled and said, "It's Yiting. When I was killed by the demon emperor, her elemental body was shattered. Only a trace of her soul was attached to the sword of life and creation. When I was taking the test of the eternal and creation throne of God, the sword of life and creation was shattered. I drew out Yiting's soul and used the power of the domain to help her rebirth. Her current body is from the eternal realms Yu Yi Queen. Yiting's body was originally of the dark attribute. I used my blood to change it. She has my blood flowing in her body, so I let her take my surname. I also have a younger sister. Only then did everyone come to a sudden realization. So long Yiting was the light elemental fairy Yiting from back then. Cherninger said enviously, Yiting, your wings are so beautiful. Long Houchen said, Yiting, Lin Xian, make your move. More and more undead creatures appeared. The long-range attacks were concentrated on the Sun-Moon Divine Snail Shield. The shield kept bursting with dazzling light. Long Houchen's spiritual power consumption was also increasing. Lin Xian and Yiting nodded at the same time. Lin Xian raised his right hand. An orange-red light lit up in his palm. Then, the orange-red light extended and turned into a huge staff that was 2 meters long. The fiery red crystal core at the top of the staff was the size of a human head. It did not look like a staff, but more like a scepter. This staff had a domineering name, Immortal Dragon's Fire.